Dear participants, faculty, and our guest speakers, good afternoon. I'm Tim Gingona.
And I'm Nerpia, your Masters of Ceremonies for this afternoon.
I would like to greet everyone this afternoon. I hope everyone is having a great day.
We definitely are, Tim. Why don't we make this afternoon not just wonderful, but also a day full of learning and new experiences?
Precisely. And on behalf of the organizers of this event, we all welcome you to this webinar titled Design the New Normal.
But before we dive into it, Tim, may I request everyone to please join us for the invocation and for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you so much. Once again, we would like to welcome you all to our webinar, Design the New Normal.
Thank you, Lulua. But before we commence this joyous event, to present the opening remarks, may we call on the academic coordinator of the College of Computer Science and the Design Thinking Course Advisor, Mr. Jefferson Bombasi.
Good afternoon, everyone. We at FEU would like to empower our students to tackle real-world problems. We encourage them to pursue big ideas and solve these problems that have a positive impact in the world and in our lives, especially in their thesis and capstone project. Today, we invited design thinking experts in local and international community to share with us their expertise, strategies, and techniques on how to solve problems creatively and innovatively. My hope is that by the end of this webinar, you will have a new appreciation for design thinking, not just as a course, but as a tool in innovative research. I would like to commend the Design Thinking Organizing Committee of the Design Thinking class, headed by Charles Reyes, in helping us organize this event. This is not just a webinar. This is a world-class webinar and the first virtual reality event in FEU Alabang, FEU Diliman, and FEU Tech. So, advance congratulations to all and thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bombasi. We will take your words to heart. I really think this would help us in our future projects. Thank you, sir. All right. So, when we talk about design, we often associate this with exclusive qualities of, let's say, an artist, a designer, the creatives. But in reality, all great innovators in literature, art, music, science, engineering, and business have made design an important aspect to succeeding. Hence, design thinking. Some of the world's leading brands, such as Apple, Google, Samsung, and even GE, have rapidly adapted the design thinking approach, and now it's even taught at leading universities around the world, including Stanford, Harvard, and MIT. But do we really need to know what design thinking is and why it is so popular? Well, we're going to be learning more about that today in this event, Design the New Normal, as we introduce to you 3 of our guest speakers this afternoon. Am I right, Lulua?
Yes, absolutely, Tim. The talk will be our main event this afternoon, which will complete the day 1 of this event, to be followed by day 2, which will be on Friday, March 12, for the Ideathon, where the participants will battle it out to win 10,000 worth of prizes.
Oh, wow. Well, I want in on that.
Yes, you should.
Okay, so how does one join the competition?
First, to participate, you must be a registered participant for this event. Then you must group yourselves into members of 6 and register accordingly. Mentors will be present on day 2 to guide you and make sure you are on the right path on your journey to becoming the design thinking champion. Complete information of the mechanics and registrations forms can all be found on the event's Facebook page, displayed on the screen right now. So please do follow the page to be kept posted for future announcements.
All right, Lulua, so I guess it's you and me. And yeah, we need 4 more. So if anyone else wants to join us, please hit us up.
Yes, guys, you know where to find us.
Okay, on a more serious note, this event is quite special, right, Lulua?
It is indeed, as we are the first webinar that gives you an option to watch here or in a virtual reality setup. In behalf of the hardworking program committee, I'm proud to present to you Hubs by Mozilla, where you can share a virtual room with others to watch videos, play with 3D objects, or just hang out. All you have to do is click the link which we provided, which will bring you to the virtual map as you can see in the screen right now. So with this, you can choose your to present yourself, put on your headphones, and jump right in.
That's pretty cool, right? What makes it even more special is that the 3D space was designed to represent certain areas of the FEU Alabang building. And again, this is thanks to the dedication of the people who made this event possible. So for more details or questions about this, feel free to ask for help in the chat and you will be assisted accordingly by the event ushers. See, pretty neat. All right, so now that we're all on the same page, I believe it's time.
Yes, it is. I believe we are all geared up for this webinar. Tim, shall we begin?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm quite excited to be here today to introduce to you the first guest speaker for this afternoon. Well, for our first guest speaker, he will be talking to us about design thinking during the trying times. Because ever since last year of 2020, we've been experiencing the new normal, as you will. As a matter of fact, the magnitude of the new normal has reached the global scale, which makes this talk relevant for almost every single person. So, doing this talk is one of the world's leading experts in design thinking and innovation. He's a sought-after speaker who has presented in Fortune 100 companies, various universities, TEDx stages, and multiple international conferences. He's currently the CEO and founder of Speaking Design Thinking and the trainer of the online edition of the Design Thinking Academy. He's the best-selling author of the books Design for Strengths in 2018 and The Art of Really Living in 2016. Our guest speaker is a graduate of Stanford University in its product design program and the Kellogg Graduate School of Management. He is also an NBC sports analyst who lectures and teaches innovation courses at Marquette, Northwestern, and CEDIM University Graduate College in Mexico. Prior to this, he was a senior executive in charge of innovation at a Fortune 500 telecom company and senior vice president at an innovation consulting firm. He's also known as the Time Guy, a leader in the field of chronoception, where they study how humans process time. And also an interesting fact is that he is an Olympic silver medalist in speed skating at the Winter Olympics in Norway. On a final note, he's also a fascinating individual, and we are very grateful for his virtual presence with us today. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. John Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Tim. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. We'll see if that works out. Let's see here. Sorry for the delay. Tim, can you hear me still?
Yes, we can hear perfectly.
And what do you see?
We see your screen.
You do?
Yes, we do.
The slides? Actually, the slides?
We see the slide and the desktop.
The whole desktop?
Yes.
Okay. Let me try to make it the whole screen.
Right.
I got the little spinning wheel for now. Hello, everyone. I'm in Las Vegas right now in the United States. And it's pretty fun to be able to speak to you from so far away. Okay. View. Enter full screen. See if that helps. That didn't. How about now, Tim?
We only see your desktop at the moment.
Okay. That's strange. One moment.
Okay.
Try to put it over in the other. I have two monitors going, so it could be because it's in the other monitor. Let's try over here. How's that looking?
There we go.
Full screen?
You see? Yes, thank you.
And you can see me as well?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right, so yeah, Design thinking is my favorite topic. I was at Stanford in the late 80s when the father of design thinking coined the term. His name is David Kelly. He's notable. David's notable for a couple of reasons. He was the head of Stanford's product design program, now called the D School. He founded the consulting firm IDEO, but perhaps most famously, he was Steve Jobs' right-hand man and co-developed the mouse, the Macintosh, and even the early iterations of the iPhone. And I was fortunate enough to have David Kelly as my guidance counselor, my academic advisor in college. So I go a long way back with design thinking. So I know some of you know design thinking as a process. It's a process and a mindset. We're going to dig into both. And I would argue that mindset's more important than process, but we'll go through the process first. This is a 5-step version. There are a 6-step version, a 7-step version. As David would say, it doesn't matter. However you describe it, core to it is empathy. So first step is you have to accept that you have a problem. And by the way, I'm going to tell mostly stories, so don't be put off that this is going to be a really dry lecture. I promise it won't be. I'll get over this in a couple of minutes. First, you have to accept a problem. Now, we all know people that aren't willing to do so. So, you know, some people have their head in the sand. You can't solve a problem you're not willing to have, or as Dave Evans, also from Stanford, says, if your problem isn't really your problem is with your problem, and that is your problem. So acceptance is key. We have a problem. What is it? Next step, define it. Do you really know the nature of your problem? Have you looked at it from all angles? Do you have the data? Have you gathered observations? Do you really, really understand it from a data-driven perspective? And then, core to design thinking or human-centered design is, and by the way, you can have all the right answers, but it doesn't matter if you're asking the wrong question. It's empathy. Empathy is the core of human-centered design or design thinking. Are you in the shoes of the person you're solving for? Do you really understand the problem from the perspective of the person you're solving for? If you're not, then you're solving your problem, and that's going to lead to nowhere. Then, and you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. It's a phrase from the southern part of the United States. It means it's really hard to see your way out of your own situation. So get that perspective, get that alternate angle. Then ideate. Only then do you finally get to generate ideas. I'm going to bet most of you are creatives, and creatives like to jump right to ideas, but if you don't understand the problem, you haven't accepted it, and if you don't have empathy, well, you might just be wasting your time and everybody else's. And you know, the key to having great ideas is to have lots of them and throw out the bad ideas. Lots of ideas is good. And then finally, you get to prototype, test, and repeat. Now, I grew up on a lake in Michigan, and probably not common in the Philippines, but every year that lake would freeze over, and we kids would put on skates and go out and race and play tag and do things like you would do on a beach. Sort of similar, it's just frozen water versus wet water. And about when I was 10 years old, my father noticed that I was the fastest kid on the ice on skates being those long blades. And he said, let's go do a race. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. So I lined up against some other boys and girls my age. The starter raised his pistol. You could see her breath in the air. It was a beautiful sunshiny day. I scrambled across the line and watched as everybody disappeared in front of me, and I got lapped. It was only a 3-lap race, and everybody passed me after 2 laps. And I tried to quit, but nobody would let me. So I had to finish the race in tears, vowing never, ever to compete on skates again. But fortunately, my father made me keep skating, and eventually I became the U.S. champion and went on to go to the Olympics, whereas Tim mentioned I brought home a silver medal. And now, when you achieve some level of success in academics, in sports, in music, in your career, people might ask you, what's the secret to your success? And the easy answer is all these things we were taught as kids, which are on the page right now. Never give up, never give in, quitters never prosper, good things come to those who wait. And if this entire talk was around these phrases, then you'd be wasting your time because we've already heard all this stuff. But I would argue, from a design thinking lens, that this same great advice for kids becomes the wrong question, the wrong challenge for adults, and that actually it becomes a collective adult neurosis as you grow older, particularly for highly driven people. If you're wondering if I called you crazy, I did. It's okay, so am I. But first, why is it great advice for kids? You may be familiar with the Stanford marshmallow experiment. 1972, give kids ages 5 to 8 the choice of 1 marshmallow now or 2 in 5 minutes. Still studying this cohort, they're now in their 50s. The 2 marshmallow kids have been more successful in every possible way. Level of education, level of achievement, level of financial income, health, well-being, relationships, you name it. The ability as a kid to delay gratification has led to great things as an adult. But as I mentioned, I think the same great advice goes off the rails for adults and becomes a negative thing. When 1 marshmallow now for 2 in 5 minutes becomes 1 marshmallow now for 10,000 in 2 years, becomes 1 marshmallow now for 10 million in 100 years, at some point you have delayed gratification beyond all temporal boundaries, and all you're doing is actually doing this. Have you ever done this? Oh, I'm sure you have. We all have. We are wired to never quit. But as an author, a humorist in the United States puts it, persistence is awesome until it's stupid. So at some point, we take this well beyond its normal bounds. We don't follow a design thinking equation of actually understanding the problem correctly. And let me prove it to you with a couple of adages that I think they'll translate. You probably have the same in your language, which is, here's the childhood guidance we are all given, right? If at first you don't succeed, try again, or try again, as Wikipedia puts it. But here's the adult wisdom. The definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. These 2 phrases, this childhood guidance and adult wisdom, are saying the exact opposite thing. So which one is right? Let me give you some advice from my 40 plus years on this planet. I hope you find it valuable. If you first don't succeed, quit. Okay, that's the end of the talk. I hope you have the rest. It's not really the end of the talk. That's a joke. I will give you the amazing advice given to me by an amazing coach by the name of Mike Walden. And this all ties back to design thinking. If at first you don't succeed, race your strengths, design for your strengths as an individual, as a family, as a team, as an enterprise, and design around your weaknesses. Don't try to fix them. When I talk about weaknesses, I'm not talking about skill gaps. We're talking about true innate talent gaps and capability gaps. All right, let me illuminate through a couple stories. So I was at Stanford. I was 21 years old. And despite being in California with no coach and no training program, I managed to get 12th place in the world in my sport. And so I graduated, and now I had all my time to focus incessantly on trying to become a gold medalist. And so that's what I did. So I got to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado, and they put me through some tests. And now these are supposed to be like academic tests, but for athletes. And so I showed up to this room at the training center, and 9 o'clock, when it was supposed to be my time, they called me into the room to get on this stationary bicycle in the middle of the room, and there were people like doctors all around me, and they said, all right, get on the bike and get ready to pedal. And so I started pedaling, and then the doctor explained, you're going to pedal for 2 minutes. We're going to put 150 watts of resistance on the bicycle, and every 2 minutes we'll raise the watts of resistance by 25 and your RPMs by 5 until you finish. I put that together. The only way out of this is to die. But what can I do? So I started pedaling, and I made it through 2 minutes, and then 4 minutes, and then 6 minutes. And about 7 minutes in, I was about to quit because I'm done. I'm completely sweating and hot, and my lungs are burning. And then the doctor says to me, you're about half done. And so I make it to 8 minutes, and I'm about to quit. And then everybody comes out of the woodwork, and they're like, no, you got to finish. Make 2 more minutes. I make 2 more minutes. They ratchet up the resistance, up the RPM. Make 1 more minute, make 1 more, make 30 seconds, make 20, make 10, make 5. This game goes on. Eventually at 13 minutes, 26 seconds, my legs, my lungs, my heart give out. I slither off the bike. I head towards the door, thought I'd done well on the test, and then I got my results on the door. Now, Lance Armstrong, if you're familiar with him, was also there. He did the same test. He was only 17 years old. He went twice as long as I did. He's only 17 years old. I had the lowest test of anybody they tested that year. in this event. And I thought to myself, how can I be an Olympic athlete if I have the worst scores? So I just disavowed the results. 2 days later, and this brings me to the first point, by the way, if you're going to design your life for your strengths and design around your weaknesses, you have to know and accept that you have them. So this is the accept phase. So I'm going to put this list up. Hopefully it translates okay. So take a look here and see if you have any of these weaknesses. Pick your top 3, top 5. I'll share. I can be disorganized. I can be restless. So which of these describe you? I'll leave that up while I describe the second test. So 2 days later, a new test. I go across the Olympic Training Center to a different room, and there's no lab coats, there's no doctor, it's just a stationary bike now on some carpet, and 2 guys that say, all right, get on the bike. Here's the test. You're going to pedal as fast as you can pedal for 30 seconds. We'll measure your peak and average power output. We'll have you out of here in a couple of minutes. And I thought, all right, this is great. This is more what I'm good at. I get on the bike. They put the resistance on. They say, this is going to be a little difficult. They put this resistance on so hard that when I pushed down on the pedal, nothing happened. I jumped up and down on that pedal and nothing happened. And then I said, hey, there's something wrong with the bike. And they said 3, 2, 1, start pedaling. So I pushed down with every ounce of energy with my left leg, pulled up with every ounce of energy with my right leg. And after a second, I got 1 rotation. But then I started getting it spinning, and after 2 seconds, I got 30 RPMs, and 3 seconds, 70 RPMs, and 4 seconds, 150, 5 seconds, 200 RPMs, 6 seconds, 230 RPMs, and at 7 seconds, I hit 250 RPMs. I could feel the heat rising from the wheel. I could smell it in the air, and for the first time now, they're cheering me on because I'm doing well, and they're going, go, 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 you got this. And for 8, 9, and 10, 11, 12 seconds, I have it pegged at 250 RPMs. And then how does that phrase go? Pride goes before the fall. Somewhere around 13 seconds, it was like the world exploded, like being simultaneously dipped in gasoline, set on fire, and drowning. All oxygen left my body. Everything began to burn. My RPMs dropped from 250 to 200 to 150 to 100 down to 60, and they're screaming at me, you can't quit now. And at 18 seconds, the lights blinked out and I passed out. And I woke up on a cot in another room, and they were on the phone. They were very excited. They're like, yeah, I know. He's the first one to pass out on the bike. Fantastic. In a sport where the shortest event is 40 seconds, my sport, I couldn't last 18 seconds. And sure enough, I got my results under the door. And sure enough, the lowest average power output of the team. But then they cut the data by intervals. And as it turns out, for the first half, I actually had an advantage over the team. And then they cut it by individual seconds. And here there's a true anomaly in the data. Turns out I have a small thermonuclear reactor in each quadricep for about 2 to 5 seconds, perfect in a sport where the shortest event is 40 seconds. Or is it? I was able to use this data, accept, define, later on, and I'll show you how. But this brings me to my second point. If you're going to design your life, your career, your team for your strengths, you have to know and accept the specific nature of your strengths. I'll put some up here. I mentioned before my weaknesses. I can also be pretty creative and pretty motivated. So write down a couple or make a note of a couple strengths that apply to you, because we're going to do a magic trick here in a couple of minutes. So at this point, I'm ready to quit, right? I've lost all direction. I've tested poorly. But here's where the magic comes in. By the way, this is the way I felt, a life of quiet desperation. But here's the secret. Most strengths and weaknesses are facets of the same thing. Which of your strengths are also your weakness? I mentioned that I can be creative and disorganized. They go hand in hand for most people. I mentioned that I can be motivated. I also can be obsessive, and so on. Are you detail-oriented? You're probably a perfectionist. If you're calm, you're probably unemotional. If you're restless, you're probably dynamic. If you're consistent, you're probably predictable. If you're direct and honest, you're probably blunt and rude. Here's the 3 rules around strengths and weaknesses. If you have a strength, you probably have the corresponding weakness. If you try to fix that weakness, you run the risk of destroying that corresponding strength. I worked for 2 years to try to fix my aerobic weakness. All that I got was slower because I destroyed my strength of my superpower of generating lots of power for short intervals, and it destroyed everything else. And if you have a weakness on this list and you didn't write down the corresponding strength, you probably have that as well. If you don't know your superpower, you don't get to put on the cape. So this guy, Matt Stutzman, I think is one of the world's greatest living examples of somebody whose weakness is also an incredible superpower. So Matt's 35, he lives in Iowa. He's a pretty normal guy, drives to work, he drives a pickup truck, he gardens, he hunts, he's married, he's got 3 kids. And that's my daughter, by the way, next to him. But Matt was born with no arms. So everything we take for granted with opposable thumbs is just simply harder for Matt. But, he grew up this way, so he's learned to adapt by using his feet to feed himself and drive and all of these normal things that we take for granted. But, sports, that would be impossible, right? Or sports. Matt holds the world's record for 7 years running for the longest accurate archery shot. He won a silver medal in London. He was 4th in Rio due to a bow malfunction. He's on the able-bodied U.S. Olympic team for Tokyo 2021 now due to COVID, not despite his weaknesses, because of them. Maybe you have a hidden superpower too, and design thinking can help you find it. So back to my story. I'm doing this, right? I've done 2 years of training and not getting anywhere and taking these tests and failing, and I'm ready to quit. But I kept getting back to design thinking and am I solving the right problem? The coaches put me on a path of fixing my weaknesses and trying to skate farther faster, and I thought, maybe that's not the right equation. Maybe they didn't have empathy for me. Maybe we defined the wrong problem. Maybe I need to accept a different problem and define a different way to ideate and prototype. And so I decided to quit the team, not the sport. Now, when you decide to quit something, when you haven't yet, you get this amazing window of something we call perspective. And sometimes that barrier that you've been beating your head against actually looks like this. So this is the entire presentation in one slide. If you needed to take it away, this is it. Sometimes the major obstacles you face in life simply need to be designed around by backing up, getting perspective, and walking around them by defining a new approach. And so I quit the team, not the sport, and I started training all on my own. And I decided to answer a different question from design thinking. Instead of how do I fix my weaknesses or how do I go farther faster, I decided how do I leverage my strengths? And maybe instead of going farther faster, what if I could go less far, less fast? Now, a couple things about my sport. The margins of victory are really tiny. This is my event, but not my year, but I show it to you for a reason. Take a look at the difference between the gold medal and the silver medal in my sport, in my event, after a lifetime of training. 2/100ths of a second. Take a look at the difference between first and 10th. So the difference between a gold medal, heroes welcome, or being sent back to Siberia because you got 10th place in the Winter Olympic Games is 33/100ths of a second. Let me clap that out for you. That's this. 10 people in that space after an entire lifetime of training. The other thing that's difficult is the physics of my sport. So if you've seen it, you enter a corner going 50 kilometers an hour this way. 2 seconds later, you exit the corner going 50 kilometers that way. That's 0 to 100 kilometers in 2 seconds. No car on the planet can do this, not even the new Tesla. So when you do the math, it creates 3 Gs, 3 G forces, triple your body weight. And a speed skater's never on 2 legs at one time, and we're always crouched down in that low position you can see in this photo. So when I break it all down for you, you're doing I have to translate to kilograms, 225 kilogram squat from deeper than 90 degrees while traveling at 50 kilometers an hour on a 30 centimeter long blade that's 1 millimeter wide on ice headed directly at a wall. It's hard. And because of this, everybody in the world adjusted the way they skated to skate a very wide track looking at the dotted line. So we would set it very wide for corners, come out very wide coming out, And we were going about 12% farther than strictly necessary to minimize those G-forces. But as somebody whose strength is generating a lot of power for short intervals, I'm like, what if I could skate a track that looked like this? This is my ideation phase. What if I could dive into each corner, take that G-force hit, generate tons of power for 2 to 3 seconds, and come out of the corner very tight, and go just less far, less fast. And so I decided to trial this the next year at the World Team Championship trials, the same as Olympic trials in a non-Olympic year. The year before, I had ended up 30th under the Olympic team program. Quitting, I showed up the next year to the same trials, and as I showed up, I got the flu. Super sick as a dog, didn't skate for 5 days. Showed up finally on the line for the day of the event. Starter raises the gun. The first event's run pursuit style. It's a time trial. They take the top 15. They send the other 100 people home. I'm sure I'm going home. Well, what could I do? So the starter raises his gun. They shoot the gun. I start skating. I skate super tight, staying very close to those blocks, diving in, taking the G-forces. And after a couple laps, I started catching my pair skater, and all I could think of was he must be sick, because he must be out of shape because I'm sick. But then after about half of the race was over, I passed him, and I finished the race, and something odd happened. My former coach had jumped out on the ice with a stopwatch in his hand. I'm coming at him at 50 kilometers an hour, so I'm trying to steer around him, but he stays in my way, so I skid to a stop, and he says to me, "Coyle, what the hell have you been doing?" And I'm about to burst into tears because I think I'm going home. So I say, I've been sick. And then he smiles and he points to the stopwatch. And he says, "No, you don't understand. You just broke the US record by 5.5 seconds. You just broke the world record by more than a full second." Same me, same skates, same everything, better question, better answer, design thinking at its finest. When you're fully stuck and you can't see an alternate solution, you need to back up, get perspective, gather data, reanalyze, get the details, get in the shoes of the person you're solving for, in this case me, and then and only then generate new ideas. I went on to set every US record back-to-back by a large margin, and went on to set the fastest time in the world that year at the World Championships. And so how do I distill this down with a nice, tight summary? I like the way Marcus Buckingham does it in his book, Now Discover Your Strengths. So I'll use his words. Each person's greatest room for growth is in the area of his or her greatest strength. This is totally counterintuitive. We're trained to fix our weaknesses. And you excel only by maximizing your strengths, never by fixing your weaknesses. And you can learn to enjoy it at the same time. I heard a quote I can't attribute, but I love it. What the world doesn't want from you is to get slightly better at what you're mediocre at. What the world wants from you is to become amazing at something you're already good at. This matters in teams as well. We went to the Olympics, 4 different guys, 4 different strengths. I was the fastest guy, so of course I would be the last guy to skate, the anchor skater. Except that we were skating on very soft, slow ice, and I'm quite big for my sport. And so I was sinking into the ice and struggling. And so the night before the gold medal round, we had a discussion with the coaches of who would anchor the gold medal round. And they said, "Coyle, you're too big, you're too heavy, it's not going to work out." I said, "Okay." Next fastest guy, Andy, they said, "You're too big and too heavy as well, it's not going to work out for you." Randy, you're lighter and smaller, maybe we should anchor you. Eric, the fourth fastest guy on the team, slowest guy on the team, frankly, lightest, smallest, best endurance. And they said, "Eric, we think you should anchor the gold medal relay because your strengths fit with the environment we're skating in." And thank God we did. We were in bronze medal position with a couple laps to go. Eric comes out for his final relay, passes his way to silver, almost gets to gold. If we had another half lap, he would have had gold, because he had the skills and strengths necessary for that environment. We hire for diversity of experience and background and skills. If we make everybody do the job the same way, we've just wasted all of that work. Put the right person in for the right job at the right time. Let them show their capacities. All right, some weird person goes to cold countries in winter to turn only left in circles, like, why should you listen to me? And you probably should get back to fixing your weaknesses, right? All right, so let me give you a case study. This is my coach. He's the one who taught me all this. Mike had a quote that he would always say to me, Coyle, you got to win it at the line. And I was, as a 12-year-old, I was like, well, yeah, where else would you win it? But this was actually complex code. This is amazing coaching. He had designed his short, sharp coaching phrases to speak directly to my strengths and weaknesses. And that's the sign of a master coach. So translation, those 5 words actually mean, Coyle, me, you don't have a strong aerobic capacity. You don't have any real endurance. What you need to do is time your sprint in our sport to barely win by the smallest of margins, because if you go too late, well, you've gone too late. If you go too early, everyone will pass you. Therefore, you must win it at the line. I went on to win 400 plus races, always by a tiny margin. I had another teammate, different set of coaching. Frankie Andreu, you've got to break away from the sprinters. You got to drop the sprinters. This meant, complex code, Frankie, you don't have a sprinter's motor. You're an aerobic athlete. You can't finish at the line with sprinters like Coyle. You've got to break away. And so Frankie always broke away. I barely ever saw him in races. He went on to 7 Tours de France, 4th place at the Olympics. He once won a race by 18 minutes. Amazing. So this is what Mike produced. So here's your case study. He produced 12 world champions, 10 Olympians, 6 Olympic medals, and for 40 years, 1/4 of all medals in the United States for the sports of speed skating, cycling came from one club in Detroit, Michigan. Nobody came from anywhere else, but by designing for each person's individual strength, he was able to create the most amazing team, I would argue, in history in these 2 sports. Okay, so let's put this all together. Back to design thinking, 5 steps: accept, define, empathize, ideate, prototype. First step, you have to accept and know and accept that you have weaknesses. We don't want to do this. We want to pretend we're perfect. It's never going to work. Nobody is. Once you can throw off that sandbag of accepting that you're not perfect in every way, you can start to design your life to double down on the things you're really good at. Second step is you have to define what is the nature of your strengths. Weaknesses tend to be quite broad. I'm pretty much bad at anything that's hand-eye or requires endurance. But as a sprinter in sports that require huge bursts of power against resistance for short intervals while balancing and traveling at high speeds, turning only left with a group of people trying to kill me, that's pretty specific. Defines 2 sports, short track speed skating and velodrome cycling, the 2 sports I've gone to the World Championships and on to the Olympics in. So what are your specific strengths? Maybe you're a good communicator. All right, that's a really broad definition. Okay, are you good at speaking to large audiences, small audiences, medium-sized audiences? Are you better one-on-one? If you're good with larger audiences, are you better as a storyteller, or maybe as somebody that's talking about analytics and data, or maybe you're better with medium-sized audiences and pulling people to talk to each other and causing group interwork, or maybe you're better with small groups or one-on-one, and if so, are you better as a listener or a challenger or as a coach? All of these are fundamentally different. They're all good communication, but again, if you don't know your superpower, you don't get to put on the cape. So what is your superpower? Some of these are pretty good assessments. Myers-Briggs I like DISC, I like Colby, but they're pretty blunt. A better way to figure it out, and you're not going to like this, but you should do it, ask 10 people that know you well, what are my top 5 strengths? What are my top 5 weaknesses? You'll like the first list, you won't like the second, but you'll find out they're actually attributes of the same thing. Then the empathy piece, core of design thinking, core of human-centered design. In this case, you're going to have empathy for yourself. Who am I? How do I show up? Is this me? Can I accept this is the me that I am? I didn't want to accept that I was disorganized, but I am. And so be it. I've now hired somebody to be organized for me. This is the nature of designing for your strengths. You do everything that you can that you're good at, and you hire somebody or outlet everything else to people that are good at the other things. That's the nature of teamwork. So what are you best at, and what shouldn't you be doing anymore? Empathy is hard to have, but once you can let go of the stuff you're not good at, and once you can spend all your time doing the stuff you're great at, people cleave to that. People love to be around the people that do their best work all the time. And then, I generate ideas, what should you be doing next? What's the next step for you in your career? What's the next step after school? What's the thing that you will do that will lead you closer and closer to being the best you that you can be? Because that's what the universe wants from you. So generate lots of ideas. The problem is it's hard to see sometimes your situation from your own circumstances. So ask others. Say, hey, given what you know of my strengths and weaknesses, what do you think the next step for me should be? They're going to be better at it than you because you're stuck in your own jar, as they say. You're going to have trouble seeing your way out of your situation. And then last is, start testing things, trying new things, take that new major, move to a different job position, try a project team, do those things that get you out of your norm and trying new stuff. By the way, there's a huge hallmark of when you're in your perfect operating environment. When you're in the flow, when you're in the peak performance state, when you're doing your very best work, time shuts off and you'll say something like, oh my God, where did that last 3 hours go? And this could be doing spreadsheets, could be writing, it could be having a sales call, it could be having a dialogue with a fellow worker, it could be anything based on what you do best. But when you have that hallmark of time stopping or shutting off or speeding up or all three, that means you're doing your very best work and you want to do more of that. So weave a thread through that and do more of that. And then finally, the tough part, when should I quit? When do I decide that this thing that I've pursued is not for me? Because we don't want to quit. We're programmed to never quit. That is definitely not the right answer. So I'd argue there's roughly a 2-year rule. If you pursue something for 2 years with all of your energy and all of your passion, you're not seeing returns, you're not seeing success, and this could be anything, by the way, a job, a major, a hobby, a relationship, then it's probably time to quit. Or at least reframe your approach, try something new. Now, it's okay to pursue things that you're not good at. That's what hobbies are for. That in the US, that's what golf is for. You just don't want it to be your primary source of income or your primary relationship. For those things, it's essential that you pursue things that are in line with their natural talents. And by the way, the people that quit for the right reasons, they always say the same thing. It's the best thing I ever did. Oh my God, because they found this next thing that's more in line with their strengths. So I'm going to close quickly with one more story, but I'll close with ending this quote, which I didn't know. Most men live lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. I pray that not be you. Okay, so I competed in the Olympics, got a silver medal. That sounds probably really cool to you. I will be honest that for more than 10 years, I viewed that as an abject failure, and I was humiliated because I was, in my mind, a one-timer first loser. So 1 Olympics only, even though I trained for 2, and second place. And so that was how I identified, as a one-timer first loser. Humiliated, had nothing to do with the sport after failing to make my second team. And then about 10 years later, 8 years later actually, I got a call from NBC, which is the Olympic broadcasting team here in the US, saying, will you be our analyst for the next Olympic Games? And I couldn't say no to that, of course. And so I showed up to Torino, Italy to be the analyst for the next Olympics for my sport. And I was welcomed back. People knew me, I knew them. And my job was to interview the parents and the athletes and the coaches to get all those backstories they used to fill in between. And the Olympics last 17 days. On the 16th day, the night before the gold medal round for my event, which is always the last day, a parent pulled me aside and in a few seconds changed the trajectory of my life. And it is, for me, why I do what I do. Because when you build a platform from your strengths, people watch. So there I am at dinner. And this guy, Al, he looks nervous, he's emotional, and he says, John, I need to tell you something. And I said, okay. So we walk away from the table, and he says, I just want you to know that we wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for you. And I said, I don't know what you mean. He said, you won't remember, but 12 years ago, after you won your silver medal, you brought it to a little reception in Bay City, Michigan. I brought my son Alex. He was 11 years old at the time. He'd never skated before in his life. You put your medal around his neck. You signed an autograph. The next day, he joined the Bay City Speed Skating Club, and tomorrow he's skating in the gold medal final. And that changed everything. I started announcing, I started having my daughter skate, I started coaching, I've been involved heavily ever since, and most importantly, I started talking about it. By the way, this is all I do for a living. I've been traveling the world for the last 6 years, telling this and other stories about design thinking and how to change your approach to life so that you can achieve breakthrough success. This is all I do. And so I realized at that moment that my life was going to change, and so I wrote that parent, Al, a letter that evening via email. And he waited till he got home to write me back. And so I'm going to close our session with reading the letter he wrote to me. And I hope you'll find the gift inherent in it that I got from it as well. John, I am deeply touched by your words and reaction. After I read your email, I went up to Alex's bedroom and looked at his bulletin board that holds only the most meaningful awards and memories of his childhood and skating career. Pinned near the right border in a Ziploc bag was a napkin from Steamer's Pub with your signature on it, dated 1994, along with a picture of you and Alex in your silver medal. I then went to our Torino Olympic photos and found the picture with you and Alex in his bronze medal, which he won the very next night. I printed it off, returned to the bulletin board, carefully opened the bag, gently slid the new photo in, resealed the bag, and pinned it back in the exact same hole. I stepped back and contemplated the many things that had to have taken place in so many people's lives in order for those two photos to be in that bag together, hanging on a bulletin board in a boy's bedroom where he only dreamed of such success. As I stood and stared, I was overwhelmed by emotion as I again attempted to comprehend the awesome unifying power of the Olympic Games and values. Thank you for sharing your success with us 12 years ago, and thank you for including Alex and me in this circle of success 12 years later. And then this is how he closes his letter. I guess you never know what role you may play in someone's life or just how important the things you choose to do or say or choose not to do or say may turn out to be. I didn't remember Alex at first. It took me a moment, but then I did. It was just a moment, but it mattered. And when you build a platform from your strengths, people watch, they listen. You might not find out for 12 years, you might not find out maybe ever, but you'll fundamentally impact the future of the community around you. By the way, a quick denouement of the story. I got a call from Alex. We're great friends now. I'm going to see him tomorrow. We're going to go skiing. I got a call from him 3 years ago, and he said, hey, John, I just want you to be the first to know. I just got off the phone with the U.S. Olympic Committee. I've accepted the head coach position for U.S. speed skating. I'll be taking the team to the Olympics in Pyeongchang. And he did. So with that, I will turn it back to Tim for questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Coyle. That made me think so much, which of course I'm going to save later. But for now, due to time constraints, let's move on to the next part. Lulwa?
That's right, Tim. It was so inspiring. For clarification, we are going to have a Q&A session with Mr. Coyle. The participants are encouraged to ask. Feel free to drop your message on the chat box so we can assist you accordingly.
All right, so for our first question, which is seen in the chat box, is from Mrs. Resty. So she asked, design thinking is like encouraging the development of more customized applications for specific type of users. How will it affect the software development industry?
Well, I mean, software is particularly tricky because you have a broad base of users. And if you don't understand the way that they're interfacing with your software, where they're coming from, what their emotional state is, how they think about it, then you run the potential of designing software for you and not for them, because you are probably the expert. I'll give you an example. A client of mine, actually, it's an airline in the US. They ran some research studies a few years ago and found that people were unhappy with their experience checking into the airline, going to the airport. And through their research, which was a little bit flawed, they determined that the problem was that it took too long. There was too much typing, and that if they could speed up the check-in process, people would be happier and they'd have higher customer satisfaction. So they redid all their systems, software that allows them to check people in, and they cut the time in half for people to check in to get onto the airplane to fly where they wanted. And then they ran research again and found that their customer satisfaction had dropped, had gotten worse. And what had gone out the window in the process of designing this new software is the client, the customer interface, no longer made eye contact. They were so engaged in the software that they failed to do the basic human connection of making eye contact. And even though the process got faster, customer satisfaction went down. So that is really, for me, the core of design thinking for all types of design, be it software, hardware, products, services, doesn't matter, is do you really understand the problem from the shoes of the person you're solving for? I hope that helped.
Thank you so much. There's another question here from Miss Nadine Diamante. What advice can you give to someone that wants to apply the stages of design thinking but gets stuck on one stage, like ideate, for example?
Great question. So, and this happens. I mean, this happens. You start falling in love with your ideas. This is a real problem with creative types, and I'm fully guilty, right? I start to understand the problem. I have an incredible idea. I think it's incredible anyway. And I fall in love with it. And this is what we call confirmation bias. And so now you want to prove that your idea is right. And you go through all kinds of legwork to prove it so. And then if it fails to pass with your customers or with the people you're working with, your partners, you've just wasted an incredible amount of time. So the design thinking mentality, I would argue, is really two really contrary things. It is a complete lack of, it's agnostic towards the idea. It doesn't fall in love with ideas. It likes ideas, it wants lots of ideas, but it never falls in love with ideas until such time as it's proven through research to be a valid idea, and then and only then do you get to be really passionate about it. So there's like scientific detachment from the ideas at first. I don't know which one's right. I like this one, but that doesn't make it right. And then once you've finally vetted it out and tested it with consumers, then and only then can you use all that passion you've channeled to pursue it with all that vigor.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Nadine. That was a really good one. Thanks so much, Mr. Coyle. Okay, there's another question here from a student that doesn't or isn't able to participate in chat. So he's asking, how can we apply design thinking in research? So this is from a computer science student.
Yeah, so it's tough in research. It's really tough. But I think this is what IDEO does well, what David Kelly does well. Traditional research, which I worked in for many years, is that you have a hypothesis and then you go to focus groups or quantitative research and you try to prove it. This is okay-ish, but oftentimes we miss nuance from observation. So what great design thinkers do is they don't just do focus groups, which calls on people to to articulate verbally what their problem or challenge or opportunity is. And quantitative research, which starts already with a predefined question, and instead observation allows you to just watch. And this is, by the way, how they figure out this airline problem. The first round of research was focus groups and then quantitative research, where they figured out that, you know, cutting the time in half would be this great thing, and then it turned like it wasn't. Through observation, they hired, I think it was actually IDEO. They came in and they just watched people in line and watched this frustration growing as the person behind the counter wasn't paying any attention to the customer. And people like to be acknowledged as human beings, and that went missing with this new process. So what IDEO and what Stanford and what great design thinkers do is they observe. They don't necessarily interfere, but they get in the shoes. I'll tell you what David Kelly once had us do was we had to be in the shoes of, in this case, homeless people, which would never be allowed, by the way, anymore. But we went and wore shabby clothes and got dirty and lived on the streets in sleeping bags of San Francisco for 3 days to try to understand the problem of being homeless. And it was fundamentally a different situation than I anticipated. I thought these people would be either on drugs or incapable of making decisions, and here I'm having discussions about Goethe with a guy in a shelter. That wasn't the problem. All kinds of different problems, but very complicated problems. But the point being, if you don't get in the shoes, you can't solve a problem that way. So I hope that helped.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Coyle. There's another question from Mr. Echage, Ernest. He said, I have a younger relative at home who has the potential to become an innovator. Is there an exercise or activity where even children can apply design thinking? Or rather, how can we encourage children to practice design thinking?
That's a new one for me, so I like it. You know, I would say that my advice would be that throughout life we face ever-mounting challenges, right? Like if you're a driven person, you're going to keep taking on bigger and bigger challenges. That's just the way that high achievers are wired, and I'm sure all of you are that way. And so back to this child as well, one of the things that children tend to do, and I did this, is they tend to start to believe that when they fail, that they failed because they're not good enough. And so it starts to move into the belief system. They fail enough times, they just start to believe they're not good enough. And there's a lovely way to time box that and say to the child, and I wish somebody had said this to me, you weren't good enough today. But that creates the possibility that you could be good enough tomorrow or the next day or next week or next month. And that reframing, which is core of design thinking, again, reframing the challenge, allows for the possibility that you can grow into, train for, develop into all kinds of potential. But for highly competitive kids, which I was one, I tended to believe if I lost that I was no good and never would be. And it's nonsense, but it is kind of the way that we're wired. It's the way the brain is wired as well. So helping to train kids to see that possibility emerges over time, and that if you design your way forward to double down on the things you do best and start to design around the things you don't do best, there's incredible breakthrough opportunity. Again, go back to my story. If I had continued to follow the Olympic training program, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, because I would never have achieved the level of performance and athletics that led to the possibilities of me going to the kinds of universities and so forth that allow me to be speaking to you here right now in the Philippines.
All right, thank you, sir. There's another question. There's quite a few questions here. There's another question from Mr. Tolentino. How does design thinking change performance consulting? What considerations should be made?
Let me find that one. What was it again? I'm sorry.
It was from Mr. Tolentino. No? And he asked, how does design thinking change performance consulting? What considerations should be made?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question because as an athlete, I can answer it. When you're consulting around performance, there's a lot of things that people accept as true which are not. And I would say the biggest one is that you have to fix your weaknesses all the time, every day. And I will tell you that is not true above the age of, I'll say 22. Maybe it's 25, somewhere in there. As the saying goes, if you're over 25 and you're still trying to fix your weaknesses, that ship has sailed. By and large, your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that is the most plastic, is pretty hardwired by then, and you're not going to be making any major changes to your capacity as a human being intellectually from an academic standpoint or sports-wise. Doesn't mean you're not plastic, we can't learn new things, but nobody wants to hear about your mediocre successes. Everybody wants to lean into the one amazing thing that you're good at. But the trick is, what is it? And I don't think we spend nearly enough time trying to figure that out. Like this is my cocktail party question. What are you best at? I will answer it for you, for me, because it took me 20 plus years as an adult. So we're talking 40 plus years to figure it out. I think that this is my superpower as an athlete was, generating lots of power while balancing and turning left and all that. I think my superpower as an adult is taking complex data, matching it to a narrative, simplifying it such that people can understand it through a story, and lending an emotional component so that they remember it. Hopefully that's going to be true for you. But that's all I do. Like I'm bad at almost everything else. But it doesn't matter, right? Like I'm disorganized, and I'm not detail oriented, and I'm not high on follow through, and I'm not really good with small talk, and I could go on and on about all the things I'm bad at, but it doesn't matter. I get paid to travel the world to talk about this one thing because that's what the world wants from me. So figure out for you, if you're a performance consultant, how to help people figure out what that thing is. If you can do that, you're giving them the greatest gift known to man.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coyle. I think we don't have much time, but I think there's so much questions here. Maybe we could do one or two more. Is that fine? All right. So this is from Miss Nadine. So she's asking, how do you help a loved one stuck at something they just keep doing, even with no success, even after the 2-year rule? They won't listen to anyone. There we go.
So that's a tough one, but I have an answer. You can't, when people are really anchored to something emotionally, it's not particularly helpful to challenge them directly. So if you tell them you're wasting your time, you're not going to get anywhere. If you tell them this isn't the thing for you, you're wasting your time. However, if you ask them carefully over a period of time, and I've done this, so I've fired 8 people in my life, and 7 of the 8 have become great friends. Now, how did I do it? I'm answering the question you asked. I kept asking them, is this the right thing for you? Is this job, do you really like doing analytics? Do you really like doing this kind of research? Do you really like doing this kind of strategy? Is this a fit for what things that you really care about? In the early days, they'd always say, oh, no, this is what I was born to do. This is what I want to do. But over time, and it usually took 3 to 6 months, they would start to say like, well, I do really like doing X, Y, and Z, and I might even be better at that, but I don't see an opportunity there. If you can help them with time by asking questions, not directly challenging, about what they're truly best at, what they truly love to do, where they get energy from, people are wired to not quit. So they're not going to answer that question yes the first time, but with repeated iterations, asking them about what they're really good at, what they really care about, what they're passionate about. I help 7 out of 8 people actually decide to quit on their own and go on to do amazing things. Now, one of them would not listen, and I eventually had to fire him, and that's the only one that I sadly am not friends with to this day.
All right, thank you so much. That made so much sense, actually. I think it's relatable for so many of us. Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Mr. Coyle. Obviously, that made me think so much. Uh, all right. So, first of all, hello, Lula, are you there?
I'm here.
Yes.
Okay. So I love what he said so much about empathy, that empathy is core. For me,
Yes.
that is so true. And the importance of asking the right questions. I think it really emphasizes the proper use of time in order to progress.
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, people are at the center of design thinking, right?
Exactly. Also, something that Mr. Coyle said that meant so much was that you must know your weakness and really accept it.
That's so true. It's so important to know your downsides and your strengths to reach your full potential.
And as Mr. Coyle said, our weakness could be our hidden strengths. Honestly, there was so much said. I could go on and on, but one thing is for sure, it made me look at my problems and weaknesses differently. All right. I think Lulu's getting disconnected. But anyway, it's design thing at its finest. To be honest, I've been quite down after losing a team competition a few days ago. I know today is not about me, but hear me out. I feel like after hearing Mr. Coyle's talk, I'm feeling motivated to brainstorm a way to get even better. But I digress. Enough about that. Let's move on to the next part, Lulua, since we're running out of time.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had a bit of technical difficulties. So, so as the Q&A is finished now, let's move on to the awarding of certificates. As a token of our appreciation for his time and his valuable contributions, this certificate of recognition is awarded to Mr. John Coyle for sharing their knowledge in Design the New Normal webinar, held by FEU Alabang and FEU Institute of Technology. Signed by the organizing committee head, Mr. Charles Kyle Reyes, the design thinking course advisor, Mr. Jojit Alcalde, and the academic head of the College of Computer Science, Mr. Jofferson Bombasi. So I believe each and every one of us today have gained more knowledge and broadened our views about design thinking. You've inspired us all. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. John Coyle.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coyle. Thank you.
All right. Now, for our second guest speaker, he will be talking about ethical design thinking in the time of COVID-19. If we have as a ways to incorporate design thinking and human-computer design concepts to help ease daily frustrations and alleviate the most pressing issues, this is one of the important questions that everyone is facing, as the pandemic has changed every aspect of our lives. With 3 years of experience in the industry, he's currently a conversation designer at Makisu, where he applies human-computer interaction methodologies and techniques in designing products for the US market. The Bachelor of Science in Information Technology from De La Salle University, the co-leader of the Philippine Web Designers Organization, which is the largest community of web designers in the Philippines, and an active contributor to various initiatives and startups as a consultant, mentor, and research speaker. Please welcome Richard Parayno.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, so good. Let me just turn on my camera. All right, so hello everyone. Just give me a moment to share my screen. All right. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see it clearly, sir.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
So I would like to apologize because I don't have it full screen right now. I'm currently having some technical issues on that, so I just made the window larger. So hopefully you can still understand um, the topic that I'll be talking about today. So yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be talking about ethical design thinking and UX in the time of COVID-19. And before we formally start, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. So, hi, my name is Richard Parayno, and I am a Filipino conversation designer. And I currently have 3 years of combined industry and community experience, currently working at Makisu. And my day job consists of doing UI design, doing UX research, product strategy, and what we do at our company is we essentially leverage the talent here in the Philippines and we connect them to clients based in the US for them to get higher than their average rate than they would normally get if they freelance here in the Philippines. So yeah, I do the UI design, the UX research, and the product strategy in the company. Outside of my normal work, I also co-lead the Philippine Web Designers Organization as its community as one of its community leads. Although we are currently on hiatus right now um, because of the current situation. And yeah, speaking of the current situation, I co-founded the Philippines' largest Discord community for Filipinos in tech called Tambayan 404. We started this May of last year. We got 670 members, and we pretty much took a different approach to organizing a community. We're mainly talking about our shared interests. We don't really talk about much our work, like design, programming. We don't really focus there. We mainly focus on gaming, our shared interests in computers, technology, and all of that stuff. All right. So if you're interested if you're interested in that, it's free to join. Just go to tambayan404.com. And back in my college years, I co-founded the User Experience Society, the LSU, which is a recognized chapter of the User Experience Society, which started in Ateneo de Manila University. And yeah, I graduated with a BS Information Technology degree from De La Salle University, Manila, fairly recently, back in 2019. And yeah, so just to set some expectations on the talk, I'm going to be giving a very brief overview of what user experience and design thinking is, but I'll mainly be focusing later on the importance of UX and design thinking during this weird and very hard time that we're in because of COVID-19. And yeah, I'll just breeze through user experience because the previous speaker, Mr. Coyle, already seem to have a very good explanation on UX. All right, so let's start. Just send your answers to this question in the chat. Um, there's no right or wrong answers. Just let me know, what do you think of when you hear the words user experience design and design thinking? It can be a word, it can be a phrase, or it can be something else entirely. Yeah, let's take like a minute just to wait for people to respond. All right. So since it seems like we're still not oh yeah, it's something complicated. Yes, you are correct. Design thinking and user experience design is something complicated, and yes, user friendly is correct. And yeah, essentially, user experience design can be defined in a lot of ways, which is why I mentioned that there's really no right or wrong answer. And that's because it's a very flexible field that touches a lot of different disciplines and industries. And based on how I have experienced UX and design thinking, and based on the interactions that I have with other people, I define user experience design as an understanding and designing the entire journey a person has with a certain product, service, or thing. This journey can be digital, mental, physical, conversational, or emotional. One thing that's important to note is that user experience design isn't restricted to technology. It's not restricted to the phones in our pockets, our current computers. it can extend to different everyday objects that we interact with um, on a day-to-day basis, right? And here, as I mentioned, since it's like a UX is a really big umbrella term nowadays, there are different terms, there are different forms of UX, and it can be found and applied in different industries. For example, if you're more of the type of person that enjoys talking to people, conducting one-on-one interviews, field research, or conducting focus group discussions, um, you might be interested in a career as a UX researcher. And if you're more interested in optimizing buttons, optimizing conversions, and basically understanding what are the factors that make users interact with certain um, things on your product, you can potentially be an interaction designer. And you might notice that I mentioned earlier that I'm a conversation designer, and it's not here in this terms in this list of terms. It's because um, it's something that's pretty different. As a conversation designer, I apply a lot of stuff from UX research, UI design, prototyping, and I essentially focus on creating the best chatbot experiences. So there are many different forms of UX. It can be applied to lots of different industries, and yeah, it's really like an umbrella term for almost everything that you can think of. And now, with that in mind, since we've established that UX is really an umbrella term and like there's a lot of different job titles around, what exactly is the role of the UX designer? Well, the UX designer, whether you identify as a UX researcher, product designer, prototyper, or interaction designer, it all boils down to you being the UX designer using different tools and methodologies like field research, interface design to help craft experiences that help the user achieve their goals. So regardless if you focus on chatbots, regardless if you focus on physical experiences, at the core of the role of the UX designer is to use different tools and methodologies to help a person achieve something through your product or your service. And as I mentioned earlier, since it's UX is really a big umbrella term, there's a lot of things that you have to consider. These four things that I listed here, they're not all of the considerations, but just for you to have an understanding of what's involved in user experience design. Number one, you have to consider the usability of your product or your service. You have to ask questions like, is it easy to use? Is it easy to understand? And then you also have to consider the visual design aspect. Is it visually appealing? Does it make sense? And it's connected to the usability part. Is the user actually able to understand the information that you put into your product or service? And it's also related to business and marketing. You have to consider, does your design achieve the business goals? Does it convert paying customers? Because your very visually appealing designs and good UX is ultimately not really useful if it doesn't really achieve the goals of the business. Like, if you have something that isn't making any money, sooner or later, the product will fail and it's going to be a waste of effort. And then lastly, one of the important things, like the other considerations you have to do, is the technology. Is your design technologically feasible? Can it be done right now or sometime in the future? Because similar to business and marketing, if you have a good design, good UX, but you can't really make it, then what's the point of designing it in the first place if no one will be able to use it, right? And that brings us to our first point, is that UX is a balancing act with a lot of moving parts. The UX designer is sort of like in the center of everything in a normal business. You have to interface with business, you have to interface with engineering, the artists, the graphic designers, the marketing people. And with that considered, you might be thinking to yourself right now, oh, UX sounds like a really important role. It sounds like without UX, everything will fall apart, and that the UX designer is a very, very important part of the team, and that everyone should follow the UX designer. But the truth of the matter is that UX cannot really function on its own. It's a team effort. Um, the common sentiment in the UX design industry is that you're not the only designer in the company. Even though you have the job title of UX designer, your customer support representatives are also um, invested in making sure that the UX is good for your company. Your engineers also play a big role in making sure that the UX of the product is good. And your marketers and your business people are also important to the entire UX process. UX, yes, it is important, but you cannot go at it alone. There is no such thing as a superstar designer that can basically carry the entire project. No, UX, the nature of UX is that you work with everyone and that you really um, connect all these different pieces from marketing, engineering, design, and business, and you take those insights that you get from there and you use it to create a good user experience for your product or your service. And what's another point that I have to make is that taking a human-centered approach to UX ensures that the problems being solved are real and not just perceived. Now, this is a very important thing that you have to remember, because yes, you can create UX that isn't human centered, and I'll show you examples of that later as we go to the examples portion. It's important, and that's why we use strategies like design thinking, design sprints. That's for the designer to be able to validate and ensure that the problems that they're trying to solve are actually problems that real people are experiencing. Because I'm pretty sure at some point in your life you have experienced something that is new but doesn't really solve anything. Let's say you have a new feature on your Facebook app, like their avatars thing. What problem does that really solve? Or is it just a perceived problem on their end, like, oh, people don't use their profile photo, so we should give them avatars, right? So yeah, stuff like design thinking ensures that you at least have a pretty solid idea and that you can be confident that the problems that you're trying to solve are real and not just being and they're not just assumptions that you want people to experience. So now we move on to our next section, which is what is design thinking. And similar to the definition of UX, it has a lot of different definitions across the internet, and depending on who you ask and who you talk to, and then depending on what their context is, you'll have a pretty different definition on what it is. But for me, in my experience, and in what the people I have and what the people that I have talked to told me, um, design thinking is really a nonlinear process and way of thinking where you utilize different tools and methodologies to gain insights from a certain problem that ultimately help you arrive at the potential solution. It is not a linear thing. The design thinking process is very fluid, and the design thinking process is there to essentially give you a set of tools and methodologies for you to arrive at the best solution for your users. And here's the thing that I was mentioning, the general flow of design thinking. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a nonlinear process, yes, but there is a general flow to help guide your work. And I'm pretty sure that the previous speaker has already shown you this 5-stage process of design thinking, which is empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. I'm just going to breeze through these 5 steps in the next slide. Yeah. So for empathize, it's essentially going outside of your room and talking with your users and understanding the whys and not just the hows. The common pitfall that people do in design thinking when they're trying to empathize with their users or with their target market is that they don't really focus on the whys of the people, and they it's a common trap that even I still fall into, to ask the people questions that can be answered in one word. that's a bad practice because the entire goal of the empathize stage is to gain an understanding of these people, and you won't be able to gain an understanding on your users if all of the stuff that you get are yes and no answers. The best answers that you can get here are the ones where the users are able to tell you a lot of things, and basically you can create a connection with them through your interview sessions. After empathizing with the user, the next step is generally to start defining the problem. So based on the different research sessions that you do, whether that's one person, two person, 5 people, or 10, there's really um, no recommended limit. It's just because it's highly subjective and contextual. You have to define the problem statement. Because, for example, if you talk to 5 people in with the same background and the same problems, then you can probably hypothesize what their problem is. And that's the entire point of the define stage. This is where you make your user personas. This is where you um, essentially try to synthesize the insights that you got from the empathize stage and try to make it into something that's easy to understand. And then the next stage is that you go into the ideate phase. And this is essentially where you think of potential solutions for the problem statement. Usually you can do a lot of exercises here. There's an exercise called Crazy Eights where you essentially have a short time frame, and you have to come up with 8 ideas that try to solve um, the problem statement that you defined earlier. And there are other ways of ideating potential solutions, but the entire point of this stage is to essentially brainstorm either by yourself or with other people, so that you can have some sort of an idea on what you can do to fix or to solve the problem. Next is that you go into the prototype stage, and that's where you pick a potential solution, you create a prototype for it, whether it's a paper prototype or a digital prototype, and then you essentially just create a pretty lo-fi or hi-fi prototype that you can give out to your users. And then when you're done prototyping, you can begin testing your designs. You test your prototypes with real users, not just people that you see on the street. They have to be your potential users that you identified and empathized with early on in the process. You observe their experience with their prototype, and you take notes for future iterations. And then from here, since it's a nonlinear process, depending on the result, you can go back to the empathize stage and do it all over again. Because there are instances where after testing, you find out, oh, I guess the solution that I made didn't really fix anything. So that's when you go back to the drawing board, do everything again, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So on and so forth, until you reach a prototype that actually solves the problems of the users. They're satisfied, and a prototype that you are confident in, that you are confident will solve their problems. All right. So now that I discussed the UX definition and design thinking and a brief overview of the process, what exactly is the point of all of this UX and design thinking stuff? These things are important when you're creating products, services, or experiences, because the moment that you create more problems than you solve, it's usually a telltale sign that your product or company will not succeed. For example, if you make a mobile app, but it's very hard to use, even if you say that the technology is great, the technology is revolutionary, but if it doesn't solve any problem, if it's not really easy to use, then no one will end up using the product, right? Um, Technology is not the only thing that makes something successful. You have to consider the UX, you have to consider the design, the marketing, and everything else. But one thing that's common between all of them is that if you create more problems for the user, They'll just simply um, delete your app, delete your product, or in the context of physical locations, they'll just not go there, right? And another thing that you have to understand is that the difference between good and bad UX can mean life or death. And this is a serious thing. There are instances where bad UX, bad design has led to fatal deaths because the design was not well thought out. Yeah. So yeah, let's move forward to the actual examples of UX. For this talk, I'm going to be focusing more on the physical examples of bad UX in the real world, essentially. So yeah, this is the value of UX and design thinking, because UX is in how you open and close doors. Um, I assume since this is a design thinking class, you're familiar with, or you might have heard of the Norman doors concept, and it's essentially this picture. If you look at this picture, um, when put yourself in the shoe of someone who is trying to enter this building. Personally, how would you enter this building? Do you push it? Do you pull the door, or do you slide it open? As a user, how do you know which one is the correct way to do it, right? Because with this door, there's a 50% chance that you will bump your head on the door when you try to enter it, or you will enter successfully, because there's no clear design for this door. Because there are doors that look like this, that in other buildings they're push, but then when you go to another building, it's a pull door. And this usually happens in establishments like Starbucks, for example. There are some doors that they have labeled push and pull, but sometimes they don't, because not every branch is the same. Moving on to the next example, UX is also in how you use the elevators. In this example in particular, how do you know which button to press? Let's say, okay, these buttons with the circle outline are the ones that I have to press to go to a certain floor. But let's say you are a blind person and you have to rely on braille transcriptions to actually use things. If you look at the elevator design, some floors do not have a label for braille. So what does that mean for someone who is blind? Do they just get automatically locked out of, for example, the 42nd floor because they don't know um, what that button is for? This is an example of bad design that affects and locks out a certain group of people, even when they should have access to it. Like, imagine if you're living in a condo and you're a blind person and you rely on these braille transcriptions, and then one day um they renovate the elevator, they remove all of the transcriptions. Then how are you going to go home? What if you're just tired from work and you just want to go home? You have to test all 46 floors, and yeah, you just have to do a lot of guesswork because there are no affordances, or there are no braille transcriptions for certain floors. So yes, UX is also in how you use elevators. And then for my last example, UX is also in how you heat your food. Now, there are a lot of different microwave and oven designs. And I'm pretty sure you have a pretty unique design of a microwave in your home. But for this example in particular, there are two sets of buttons. On the left, there are buttons that are badly labeled. And on the right, there are buttons that you don't know what will happen. Because some microwaves, if you press the numbers, it will run a preset on the microwave and it will start heating your food. But in this case, does pushing on the buttons start the timer, or does it do something else? And in the case of the presets on the left, what will happen if you push them and then the food that you're heating up accidentally explodes because you're not sure what the buttons are for? Now you can say that, oh, I already know how to use my microwave. Um, I'll just take that into account, or I'll read the manual or something like that. But the problem here is that you cannot expect everyone to have the same experience as you. You have your own knowledge, and your own knowledge and experiences do not necessarily transfer to other people. And that's the value of UX and design thinking. You make these products understandable by everyone, usable by everyone, because yun nga, there are cases where it's a life and death situation. And in the case of this microwave, if you have a visitor at home and they accidentally blow something up in your microwave, then voila, you lose a microwave and you have a fire hazard, right? So for all of these examples, these real world examples, I would just want to stress the fact that UX and design thinking is not restricted to digital products. It's not restricted to the phones we have. It's not restricted to our computers. It's very much present in the environment that we live in. It is very much present in the things that we use on a day-to-day basis, and it very much affects how we experience our lives. And this is a quote shared by my mentor recently. I'm not sure if my mentor got this from somewhere else, but I couldn't search it up, so I'll just share it here. UX is like a joke, and if you have to explain it, then it's a bad joke. Case in point, going back to the examples here, if you have to explain that your door is push or pull, and you still refuse to put actual signs on the door that says it's push or pull, then that's your fault. That's your decision. That's your design decision. Let's say that's your design decision to not add sign because of the aesthetic, because it's minimalist. Well, your design decision causes 50% of your users to bump their head on the door. And this also applies to the elevator. This design decision of not adding braille transcriptions, it locks out people who are otherwise able to give business to your product or service, or they just cannot access this entirely. So now let's move on to the next section. We're going to be talking about UX design thinking and ethics in the time of COVID-19. So yes, we live in an increasingly connected world, and technology is one of the key drivers of human innovation and is almost required to participate in modern society. Technology products created with a focus on providing the best user experience have undoubtedly improved our lives. This is a fact. Whether we know it or not, products with good UX have affected us for the better. Yes, this is 100% the truth. During the pandemic in particular, technology has helped us maintain and nurture our connections with other people. Technology has also allowed us to keep the economy moving, and technology is what allows us to do this all from the safety of our homes. Through technology, you're still able to learn. You're still able to earn credits toward the completion of your degree. Technology has kept our economy afloat in the sense that delivery apps are able to um, allow us to order food in the safest way possible by not going outside. And yeah, essentially technology is a great thing, right? Look at one of the examples here. Contact tracing apps help reduce COVID-19 COVID infections, data suggest. And that's true. With technology, we're able to know who is infected, when they were infected, and who were they in contact with. And it helps our healthcare workers track these people and isolate them to prevent the spread of COVID. Imagine um, imagine the previous pandemics where there was no digital contact tracing solution. All of the contact tracing was manual. All of the paper was it was a mainly paper process. And even in the old times, you really had to do everything manually, and that's added stress to the people who needed to manage the pandemic. Now you just have to download an app, download the QR code, or write your name in a list somewhere, and then you can be confident that if someone is COVID positive and you chanced upon them at one point in your day, you'll be informed to quarantine because there are now digital contact tracing apps. And then here in the next part, it might be funny, but young people are starting, or Gen Z people are starting to turn to TikTok for cooking tips. In the old days, or even until now, you had to really pick up a cookbook or ask someone to teach you, or just experiment on your own when you wanted to learn how to cook. But now, through TikTok, you just scroll through the page, through the page, and then you can figure out, oh, this food looks nice. I could try cooking it later, and then boom, you have a new hobby. You turns out you enjoyed cooking, and then you start having a new skill. And thanks to TikTok, you were able to discover this new hobby of yours. And then another positive thing of technology is that in March of 2017, a chatbot that overturned 160,000 parking fines was now helping refugees claim asylum. Imagine that, a chatbot that was mainly built for parking fines and legal advice for that helped people from war-torn countries claim their asylum and move to a better place and escape the realities of war. And that's the great thing about technology. It really helps a lot of people. But what happens when, in the pursuit of innovation, we don't consider the societal impact of technology? In this example, California drivers decide Uber and Lyft drivers are contractors, which essentially means they're not entitled to a minimum wage, they're not entitled to health benefits, they don't have leave credits, and essentially, even if they work 8 16-hour days, being Uber and Lyft drivers, they're not entitled to any benefits. They If they stop working, they stop working. They don't get paid. And here locally, just last year, Food Panda riders decry decreased pay, alleged irregularities in delivery system. Imagine the people who we can consider our frontliners because they deliver our food, and they deliver food from our favorite restaurants and to the safety of our homes. The people who deliver our packages to our friends and family and loved ones, they get decreased pay and they don't get entitled to any benefits. And I think there's this thing with local delivery apps where a majority of them still have to pay a rental fee for their bags, even if they are capable of fully paying it, just because, right? So in the time of COVID-19, designers and technologists shouldn't shouldn't be contributing to systemic inequalities. We need to take a step back and assess the systems that we are building. Now, you might be wondering, I'm just a UX designer. What am I supposed to do if the business tries to decrease people's pay? Well, you have to make your voice heard. You are a designer. You are the one implementing or to an extent, you are the one implementing the decreased pay. For example, in delivery apps, if you design the if you make the delivery map visible again, just because you want the user to see where their order is, even if they haven't gone to the restaurant yet, that will add an added pressure to the riders because they're going to get harassed by the users. Where is my food? Why are you still not here? Why are you taking so long? Right? Designers are just as implicit as the business people, as the engineers and the people who create these decisions. And yeah, designers and technology shouldn't contribute to these systemic inequalities. You should make an effort to speak up and make your thoughts heard and always advocate for the user. Next example, no student left behind. During pandemic, education only for those who can afford. And then there is also the mental health angle. Zoom schools' mental health toll on kids. Academic and social development are likely to slip during online learning for many students. Now, yes, it is true that everyone around the world was suddenly thrust into distance learning, into work from home arrangements, even if they weren't 100% prepared. But as designers, it's our responsibility to ensure that the technology that we create doesn't negatively impact other people. In the example of Zoom, you should, as a designer, you should think up of ways where you can reduce the Zoom fatigue for certain people. No student left behind. Um, that the technology that you create should be accessible to everyone. And since UX is not restricted to digital or technology products, you need to create ways that people can participate in education without having to have their own cell phones, their own computers, and essentially having to uh, have an added burden to the students um, who cannot really afford these things. Because even though you can say that, oh, 60% of our users have a laptop, that is still 40% people who don't have a laptop. And they probably have a good reason why they're not able to afford a laptop or a cell phone. And it's your responsibility as a designer to make sure that those 40% are still included with the rest of the people. And yes, going back to my point earlier, the difference between good and bad UX can mean life or death. And in the example earlier, the difference between good and bad UX means someone being delayed because they're not able to continue their studies, or someone being able to finish their studies because they have different avenues of learning, of working from home that's not reliant on a digital or technological solution. And now here's another example. This is an example of how UX has affected lives. Over on the top left, let me read the article. Palantir admits to helping ICE deport immigrants while trying to prove it doesn't. Um, Palantir is a company in the US that creates software that helps the immigration and customs enforcement team in the United States to deport undocumented immigrants. Imagine you are an undocumented immigrant in the US who just wanted to escape the bad conditions in your country. And then just because of your Facebook account, you get deported because they found out through your Facebook account that you live in this place. And then over here on the bottom, clunky software, the confusing UI just cost Citibank $500 million. This happened just last month. Imagine that is $500 million of the company's assets that you cannot reverse because you did not do your due diligence as a UX designer, as a UI designer. And yeah, you cost real money for other people. So it's not just life and death, it's also the money of other people. And you as the designer is responsible for preventing that from happening. And then here on the upper right, Alex Kearns died thinking he owed hundreds of thousands for stock market losses on Robinhood. His parents have sued over his suicide. Robinhood is a stock trading app in the US, and there's a mode there where you can essentially practice how to trade stocks. And the design team messed up so bad that they didn't clearly show the user that that the debt that the user was in was not real money. Imagine waking up one day seeing that you're $75,000 in debt, and just to put it into perspective, $70,000 in debt is 3,641,250 pesos. Imagine waking up one day and then seeing that you have a debt like that, like just because the designer didn't really do their due diligence, because um maybe they were chasing aesthetics or minimalism. We'll never know, but this is the impact of UX. You have to understand, as the designer, real people are affected by your design decisions. And this is the number one example. Facebook and Instagram affects lives on the daily, especially us here in the global south. For example, the Rohingya massacre in Myanmar was mainly incited because of fake news posted on Facebook. Voter manipulation and data privacy issues popped up when Cambridge Analytica was able to abuse Facebook's platform to manipulate voters. And most notably, um, the government, Cambridge Analytica, back in 2016, it's a known fact that the Philippines was one of their test markets for their voter manipulation and pretty much their fake news and troll initiatives. And you have to ask yourself the question: what happens when the government uses Facebook as a weapon, especially in the Philippines, where you can consider that Facebook is pretty much the internet for everyone? And then here on the lower right, Bianca Devins, the teenager whose murder was exploited for clicks. Imagine people taking advantage of a bad situation, someone who was killed and posted on Instagram. People are reposting the pictures and videos just so that they can get additional followers, additional clout in their following. That's the fault of the UX design. That is the fault of the product. They did not think that through. So as I close this presentation, there are 5 things that I hope that you can remember when you talk about ethical UX and design thinking and technology in general. Number one is that technology and design can be used both for good and bad. This is a fact. I have already mentioned that technology, social media like Facebook, allows us to connect with each other, even in these times, especially in these times where we can't physically meet each other. We can organize events, get speakers for our events. But you also have to consider that technology can be used for bad, and it will be used for bad, especially if the system is not designed to block those bad actors. Case in point, the Cambridge Analytica hacks were because the platform did not expect that someone will do voter manipulation on their platform. Number two, for every piece of controversial technology, there was a UX designer who was involved. And this is essentially me saying that the designer is implicit in the things that their company does. Even if let's say a Facebook designer doesn't work on the newsfeed, they are still working in an environment where they have influence over other people that might be working on the newsfeed. And the role of a designer is to always advocate for the users, even if it goes against the company, because the entire role of a designer is representing the user to your engineering team, to your marketing team, to your business team, making sure that your company knows that no, we shouldn't do this because the user will have a bad time. Imagine if Facebook had the foresight years back to know the impact of Facebook in countries like the Philippines, in Myanmar. Maybe they would have created or designed solutions that can prevent abuse of the platform at scale and essentially mess up the democracies around the world. Number four, your design decisions affect real people. The pixels that you push, the images that you create, and the products and technology that you create are used by real people. Going back to the elevator example and to the door example, just because you design it in a certain way and you think, oh, it looks really nice, it looks very functional, real people are going to be using that at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, these real people are the ones who will tell you whether a design is good or not. Because a common saying in the UX design industry is that good design is invisible, but bad design sticks out like a sore thumb. Like those examples with the elevator and the door and the microwave. Then lastly, innovation shouldn't come at a cost to other people. There are always ways to create new technology, groundbreaking, revolutionary technology without compromising other people, without compromising their rights, without introducing racial bias. In the context of artificial intelligence systems, you do not have to take someone's job to automate their process, right? Innovation shouldn't come at a cost to other people. It should never ever affect other people negatively, because yun nga, these are real people with families, with their own experiences, with their own problems in lives, and to be replaced by a machine or a product or a solution without and essentially overnight telling you that you are obsolete and that it's your problem to find how to make yourself useful, that's a bad thing, and it really shouldn't come at a cost to other people. So yes, that's the entirety of my talk. Thank you for listening. Here are some resources to help you learn UX. My number one recommendation for learning about UX and design thinking and technology in general is to leverage the many different communities we have here in the Philippines. Our community organization culture in the Philippines is very unique in the sense that we do a lot of stuff for free for the benefit of the community. For example, User Experience Philippines, even though and Philippine Web Designers Organization, even though we're on hiatus right now, we usually organize monthly meetups that can help you upskill yourself and basically help you discover UX, design thinking, web design, and all the other things related to those organizations. You can also join Develop if you're more of a person who is interested in social change through technology. um, these communities are completely free to join, and the value that they give back to you um, is 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 a lot, because I'm personally a product of the community. I joined the community when I was in college, and then I got my first job through the community, and yeah, I owe a lot to the community. And if you want to choose to pay for an online course to help jumpstart your learning, I would highly recommend the Interaction Design Foundation, because it's a recognized organization in the industry, and it offers a lot of bang for your buck. I think it's like $10 or $13 a month, which is like 600 or 700 pesos. And then you also have certificates to prove that you have done these courses there. And so, yes, that's it. Thank you for listening on ethical design thinking and UX in the time of COVID-19.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Mr. Parayno. That was very informative. Hope everyone took note of the important resources that was added, and join if you are interested in social change, as they are completely free. Again, that's the interactiondesign.org. But before anything else, let's proceed with a Q&A session with our guest speaker. Everyone's encouraged to ask questions or advice regarding the presented topic. So feel free to drop your message on the chat box so we can assist you accordingly. I guess we could start. We have, for the first question from Mrs. Resti Aldana. So she asked, if you are a mere developer and you know that you are instructed to code something unethical, you voice it out, but management did not listen. What should be your next action?
Excuse me. So, that is a common concern, and I have heard a lot of stories about this exact situation from my friends, acquaintances, where they really can't do anything. Now, the thing that you have that I was not able to mention earlier is that this kind of thing really happens. When it happens, it is what it is. You can't really quit your job on the spot, because you need to earn money for yourself or your family. So for these instances, even if the management does not listen, you shouldn't stop telling them that no, this is wrong. You should still keep making an effort, trying to make a change within the organization. And if ultimately they're not the type of people to really listen to you, and if they're making it a habit to create unethical practices, then maybe that company in particular is not a good fit for you. Your skills might be a fit, but at that point it becomes into a culture problem, because I personally I will not be able to work for a company that, let's say, um like a mining company that deforests the mountains here in the Philippines. I won't be able to stomach that type of work. But one thing to understand is that if you really need the money and that's your only option, you it's okay to do it. It is what it is. We are essentially kain ng sistema eh. Wala eh. That's life. So as much as possible, take the moral high ground. Always try to make change from within. But yeah, either you suck it up and keep working because you need the money, or you start looking for another company.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parayno. There is another question from Miss Diamante. She asked, how can we apply UX and design thinking in online learning that might help to make it effective for students and help them enjoy online classes more?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
She asked, how can we apply UX and design thinking in online learning that might help to make it effective for students and help them enjoy online classes more?
All right, so that's a very great and relevant question. What I would suggest is that you always start with the first step of the design thinking process or UX in general. You talk to the people who are concerned, understand their problems. Maybe this person doesn't have a stable internet connection, and maybe they have some other things going at home because we're all stuck at home, right? So that's usually the best place to start. Understand the pulse of your students, understand the pulse of the people who are using your service, because from there, if you have an idea of what their problems are, then you can start to propose ideas to them that, oh, maybe we could try a different class schedule to account for your slow internet or something like that. Or maybe we could use take home modules or something like that. Um, the main thing that you have to remember is that whether if it's UX, design thinking, design sprints, or any other UX user experience related topic, the place to start is always to talk to the people and try to understand where they're coming from. Because if, for example, you ask them just out of your obligation, but you don't really care about them, essentially, hypothetically, um, then the entire premise of UX and design thinking will not work out because you are the advocate of your user in your company, and if you can't empathize with your user, then you won't be able to create solutions that solve their problems. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parayno. I think we have time for one last question, sadly. It's coming from Mr. Yuichi Uehara. So he asked, what advice or tips can you give for a complete beginner on learning web development?
Right. What advice or tips can I give for a complete beginner on learning web development? All right. So let me preface everything that I am not a web developer, at least not anymore. I started my career as a UX designer. But what really helped me when I was in college learning web development on my own um, was to take all of the information that you can get on the internet, but don't dive into them too much because the thing with software development or web development in general is that it's a very opinionated space. Um, Starting with the different frameworks, there are different ways of building web applications that not everyone agrees upon because there are a lot of web developers. So yun nga, take all of the information that you can find with a grain of salt. And most importantly, the thing that will motivate you to actually learn web development is to work on a side project, whether that's joining a hackathon, even if you don't know how to code yet and learning it there, or if you just want to like try to replicate an application on your phone or on your computer. That is usually, at least for me, for people like me who are not really attentive in classrooms, for people like me who are more much more prefer actual workshops and getting work done, having a project or a side project that you can build towards is the best way to learn web development. And that's actually how I discovered web design, HTML, CSS, front end, and eventually that's also how I discovered user experience design.
Thank you, Mr. Parayno. Do you mind for one last question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So there's one more question here from Mr. Ray Carlo Abacan. So he's asking, would you recommend a career in design thinking?
Um all right. This is a very good question. Would I recommend a career in design thinking? My answer to that is that I would never recommend something that you do not have an interest in or something that you know that you won't be enjoying. For example, it's similar to asking someone if they would recommend a work or a career in web development. If the person is just in it doesn't really like web development, then of course, even if you recommend it to them, they won't do it. Most likely won't do it. But for design thinking in particular, there are a lot of different considerations that you have to factor in. Is number one, it's a very people focused job. My day to day involves chatting with a lot of different people and scheduling calls with potential users and stalking people on LinkedIn and sending messages to them if they're potential user. And this is not something I would recommend if a person is introverted or they are not able to perform at that kind of level, because it's a very people focused job. But there are introverts in UX, there are a lot. But if you cannot perform at that level, then maybe design thinking is not for you. But maybe a different role in user experience design might be for you, right? Because design thinking is only one part of the what you can call the user experience umbrella. There are also the UI designers, there are also the interaction designers, the motion designers, the UX researchers, the prototypers. So would I recommend a career in design thinking? I would say that you figure out what you really want to do first. Search up on the industry, try to attend some meetups, some workshops, try to understand what the day to day is for people holding design thinking workshops, and essentially have a good educated guess, or at least educate yourself first before you go head on to a career in design thinking. Because the worst thing that you can do for to yourself is you go into an industry that you think, oh, this is nice, I can earn a lot of money from here, but down the line you realize that it's not really something that you like doing, and even though the money is great, you feel empty, right? That's the worst thing that could happen to a person, essentially.
Thank you again, Mr. Parayno. That was such great advice. All right, so thank you again, everyone. That ends the Q&A portion. I apologize for we are having insufficient time for a speaker to answer the rest of the pending questions.
All right.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Parayno, for the wise insights about the field. That's so interesting to know that there are many different forms of UX, which means if someone is interested in the UX field, they have various options to choose from.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, UX is a team effort. It's human-centered, hence why it can be quite challenging to make something work for all, considering everyone's unique.
And how design thinking is fluid and not static, but it still has a general flow to help, guide designers. I think that actually helps with creativity in how you are not restricted in certain rules.
Yeah, I agree. Like the UX in how you should open a push or pull door, right? How does creativity affect the proper UX design for that? All right, so who are you doing it for? Who should you be advocating for? So yeah, pretty interesting.
I agree wholeheartedly that UX should be about the user and how intuitive, and not confuse people in how to use something, be it a digital or a physical thing.
Yes, it proves how UX and design isn't limited to digital stuff. Just like what Mr. Parayno said, it is needed everywhere. The important thing is to be wise about your creative decisions, so to make people's life easier. It's something we need to really make sure of, because it can mean life or death for some. Just like what Mr. Parayno mentioned earlier.
That's right. As he said, designers are as implicit as the business owners, bosses, or higher ups. As designers, we should push and create ways to contribute to the good, rather than contribute to the system inequalities. Good design thinking has helped tremendously during this COVID-19 era, and it has helped everyone get through these hard times.
Yes, exactly. Okay, we're getting a bit carried away here. So let's move on to the awarding of certificates. So as a token of our appreciation for his time and his valuable contribution, The certificate of recognition is awarded to Mr. Richard Parayno for sharing their knowledge in Design the New Normal, held by FEU Alabang and FEU Institute of Technology. Signed by the organizing committee head, Mr. Charles Kyle Reyes, the Design Thinking Course Advisor, Mr. Jojit Alcalde, and the academic head of College of Computer Science, Mr. Jefferson Bombasi. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Parayno. That was very inspiring and very informative presentation. Okay, so that felt like such a long day. Okay, so we are down to our last speaker for this afternoon. Okay, so who among you feel like sometimes you're stuck on a path that you just don't feel too passionate about? Or perhaps you've made a wrong decision that is leading you to make even more questionable decisions. Well, our next speaker found himself in a similar situation where he was working in the corporate world for 16 years, until one day, he decided to focus on his own startup business, the DNA, or the D New Academy. It's a company where he's finally doing something he loves, because he's able to help individuals and companies by conducting workshops for product innovation, marketing, and visual communication. He was the creative director of the biggest retail company in the Philippines, the SM Retail, where he discovered the power of design thinking. His works include strategic design, driving organizational transformation, and human-centered visual communication, serving 32 departments and 62 branches nationwide, where he managed to deliver marketing services from his in-house creative team in just 1 year. He is the CEO of the Growth Hack Playground, an e-marketing specializing in sales funnel, social media content marketing, and chatbot for personal branding, e-commerce, and real estate. And in terms of his educational background, our guest speaker took up mechanical engineering, but later on decided to get his degree in advertising and PR at the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. He also took up design thinking at the National University of Singapore and took up his Google Design Sprint 2.0 Masterclass at AJN Smart. He's here with us today to talk about innovation and creativity as a competitive edge. Let's give a big virtual round of applause to Mr. Cleo.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So, can you guys hear me? Can you please type yes in the chat box, please, if you can hear me? Thank you. So, how are you guys? I know it's been a long day. Okay, let's gonna make it quick. Okay, please bear with me. I don't usually use Teams. Open share tray. Okay. Share desktop. Okay. Awesome. So we have 120 participants. Can you see my screen right now? Okay, can you say something because I can see the chat box? The host, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Perfect. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Cleo. This is the first slide. God is my designer. If you want to understand why God's my designer, please visit my Instagram where I explain why God is my designer. Okay. So without further ado, let's rock and roll. Okay. So again, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Creativity and Innovation as Competitive Edge. In this webinar, you're gonna learn the challenges in the organization. What is the design thinking? How design thinking looks like, and how important design thinking is. Although the first two speakers already discussed what's design thinking, but let's see, in my perspective as a practitioner, what's the meaning of design thinking is. So this is my promise. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to discover the power of design thinking. But first, who is this for? This is for aspiring innovators who want to unstuck themselves. And this is for the students and professionals who are looking to complement their other skills. And also for the innovators who are tired and hard selling and want to generate massive sales and revenue. And also, this is for students and professionals who want to reach more clients and make more impact. whether professionally or personally. Okay, so before we discuss design thinking, let's go fly to the future first. Yes, we're gonna go to the future. Awesome. Okay, little did we know that we are already at the fourth industrial revolution. But before we go and discuss to you what's the fourth industrial revolution, let me share to you when is the first, second, and third industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution happened in 1765, 1870 on the second industrial revolution, and the third is 1969, where automation of computers, electronics, and etc. So all of this, we are all experienced this. And now we are on the cyber physical of system, Internet of Things, and networks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future that you are gonna face after your college. So most of the company now supposed to be high tech or technology based. But unfortunately, in developing countries, we are 50% human, as in human powered pa. Hindi, kumbaga sa kotse, pawis, no? Pawis is steering. And the rest are already powered steering, okay? Power steering. So Philippines are still developing countries, or we still don't understand what's this design thinking and technology is all about. Okay, so something like this. Toys R Us, they don't believe on e-commerce way back 10 or 20 years ago. They don't believe in e-commerce. They don't believe that people will go actually to the internet and website and select for the toys and buy it. No, they don't believe in that. What they believe is people will go to the mall, check the items, and then buy it. You know what? They became part of the history. This is a good example. You guys experienced this during pandemic until now. Some of you cannot go to the mall because there's an age restrictions and there's a lot of restrictions. So what happened? Most of my friends in e-commerce, they tripled their sales. This is the best time of their lives. Some of my friends are 25 years old. They're earning multi-million monthly selling items via e-commerce. And Toys R Us is part of the history. But I think Target is trying to acquire them and buying some of their shares and trying to revive the Toys R Us. Okay, so this is what's gonna happen to you if you don't embrace the technology or innovation. So if you don't innovate, you'll be part of the history as well. That's just like Kodak. Try, ladies and gentlemen, try to look at the baol ng parents nyo o ng lola nyo. You will still find a Kodak in there. That used to be so high tech. That used to be so innovative. Then eventually, these things came up. They are all became part of the history. I don't know how they earn money now, but I think the cinema from filming, they still earn them because cinema still produces film. But what if cinema goes digital? Diba? So paano mangyayari sa kanila ngayon? So they became part of the history. Just like this cell phone, okay? Hindi ko din alam to. I'm just like you guys. I don't know this. Pero ang professor nyo alam to. Just kidding, okay? Pinapatawa ko lang kayo, okay? You are all so serious, okay? So, Nokia. Okay, I have 3 Nokias in my life, and I'm so excited, but I'm bragging about all of these Nokias. And then they became part of the history nung dumating si Blueberry, and then totally wiped out when iPhone came. Boom. So what happened? We thought this technology is already innovative, and then they forgot to innovate, or they don't know how to innovate. That's why they became part of the history. They're trying to go back in the sphere or in the circle of technology, pero people don't accept them anymore. iPhone now is the number one technology phone, and the next Samsung, and then Huawei. So this is gonna be the future. Whatever you're holding right now, the smartphone that you're holding, I know you're multitasking. You're not listening to me. Look at this. What you're holding now will be an obsolete in the near future. In fact, next year, obsolete na yan because we have a new model. That's how fast our technology is. So look at this, guys. I want you to observe this. 1400. 1400, no? This is the first industrial revolution. At anong dinevelop nila? Printing press. They developed printing press. For what? They developed printing press para mag-print ng Bible. So after 200 years, na-develop ang telescope. So after 150 years, steam engine. After 50 years, telegraph. After 50 years, light bulb. After 50 years, telephone. After 50 years, car. After 100 years, man on the moon. After 100 years, microprocessor. And then so on and so on and so forth. Have you guys noticed this? Nagkakadikit-dikit na. Since 2000, this is the splurge, no, of the technology, and masyadong condensed na. So what more, 2 years or 3 years from now, when you graduate, sandamakmak na ng mga technology out there. So if you don't upgrade yourself, you will be obsolete. That's the relevance of design thinking in our lives. So look at this, guys. Look at this. You're not graduated yet, but some of you are already professionals. This came from World Economic Forum. In 2015, look at this. These are the top skills, no, that needed in each organizations. Complex problem solving, coordinating with others, and the 10th position is creativity. But I want you to observe this. Creativity jumps to the 3rd position. Wow, amazing. Anong year na po tayo? Can you please type here in the chat box, what year are we now? 2021. And yet people don't believe in creativity. They discard graphic artists as the main designer of this business. Even sa mga business masterals, they don't talk about creativity. I don't understand why MBA don't talk about creativity, and yet this is the future, that this is what we need in the future, creativity and innovation. Maybe we need to look our curriculum, no? Because what we think in the creative designers are really non-academically good, which is, that's the panahon pa ni Kopong-Kopong. If hindi ka magaling, ang consider ka agad sa'yo, bobo. Pag artist ka, ang sasabihin sa'yo, you're not academically good. Pero if you're academically good, they have a good chance, no? They can see your future. Pero pag creatives ka, they can't see your future. Artist yan, magdududol lang yan. So walang future yan. Pero you know what, guys? All the designers here, sino mga designers po ito? Sino mga nag-graphic design? Sino mga nagdududol? Can you please type it here in the chat box, please? Yeah. You need to introduce yourself now because you are highly relevant in the future. Okay, so that's the future, guys. Let's now go back to the present. We have a lot of challenges happening in the office. You are still in the university, but you are now experiencing this. So most of us, these are the challenges that we often work toward unclear goals and programs and branding changes repeatedly. Diba? Parang, okay, may project kayo. O, pinagawa ng professor. This is your project. Okay po, ano pong gagawin? Did you see the objective? Ayun po. So, ano gagawin po natin? Ano gagawin natin? Sabi ni Prof, gawin natin to. So, we don't know what to do because unclear goals. And then, there's a lack of real data on which to base business decisions. Instead, it's relying on endless internal discussions. This is normal. Most of us, no, in a brainstorming session, na-experience ko na yan. Madali lang yan. Madali. Ko. Diyan ako kaya nakilala. Sobrang galing ko dyan. Sige, saan base yung stats mo? No? Saan base yung data na sinasabi mo? And then we have a pressure to be innovative, and yet we don't know how to start. Imagine, guys, estudyante pa lang kayo, nakikita nyo na itong challenges. What more? After graduations, may encounter nyo to sa office. Okay, I want you to be innovative. Ano pong innovative po? Gawa mo ng idea. Boss, can you please teach me? Fresh grad pa lang po, okay. Okay, 6 months, and then look for another job. Okay, and then project cycles run too long. These cause our teams lose their enthusiasm and focus. Have you experienced this in school? You've been doing a lot of projects, and then ang tagal na niya, pag nag-meet kayo, ano nga ba pinag-usapan natin? Ano mga ba to? So what more in the office setup? This is really happening in the office. Ang daming projects na 6 months na, 4 months na, 3 months na, hindi pa rin tapos. Why? Because everybody wants it perfect. Yes, you heard it right. And then also, we made decisions of what we think we know. That is all wrong. And then we made decisions based on include information data. And then this is the big challenge sa inyo, mga students. What if what you learned now will not be applicable in the future? We are now living in a fast-paced economy. Industry is really, really moving really fast. I became a part-time professor in a particular university, and then nakita ko yung module nila, same pa din ng module when I was way back in college. That was when? 15, 20 years ago. And I told my students, oh my goodness, this is my curriculum way back 20 years. And then nakatingin sa akin yung estudyante, sir, anyway, sige, they just follow the curriculum and I will teach you design thinking. Yay! So, tigawan yung mga kids. Okay, so this is what we see, no? In every project that we encounter, we see it this way. We thought it's linear. Project, madali lang yan. Point A to point B. Sus, nagawa ko na yan. But you know what? If you don't have process, it's gonna be like this. It's really messy. Parang, ano next step? Basta gawin nyo to. Next step? Di ko alam. But if you have process in your mind, you understand it's gonna be messy in the beginning, but you will have a happy face with a heart in your eyes at the end. That's because you have a design thinking process in your DNA. So this is what happens in every project. No, this is the idea. So idea, build, launch, and data. But we tend not to prolong the production. That's why we're taking so much in building, and some of the organization is really taking so much in building, in which what we need is just the idea and data. Yan lang po ang kailangan natin. So don't be scared in implementing your ideas right away. There is no such thing as perfect. Wala pong perfect. Wala po. Everything is WIP. What is WIP? Work in progress. So lahat ng project na ginawa nyo, everything is work in progress. Lahat yan work in progress. Even you are still work in progress. So this is how design thinking plus design sprint pa from Google. Ito ang ituturo ko sa inyo sa loob ng what I'm left for me, 27 minutes. Okay? So what is design thinking? The speaker 1 and 2, they define design thinking. So let me, in the third time, no, parang awa nyo na, maintindihan nyo what is design thinking. Okay? So design thinking is correctly identifying the problem and coming up with solution that meets human needs. It begins in developing and understanding people and ends a solution that's really tailored for them. Wait, watch this. I highlighted that meets human needs. Yes, your product should meet the human's needs. Ang problema po kasi sa atin, no? We are so passionate about our product and we forget to connect to our customer. We forget to connect to our clients. Ang ganda ng naisip ko. This is the next Uber. This is the next Facebook. Magiging next Tesla ko. And then, pagka-launch mo, walang bumili. Why? Because there's no human in your product, in your service that you created. You should consider them first. Understand their pain points. If you understand the pain points and then start doing a product or service. Now, if you think design thinking is only for graphic designer, I'm sorry po. Hindi porket creative director ako, nagsasalita ako sa inyo because this is my forte. No, this is not for designers. This is for everyone. And if you think design thinking is a tech-based solutions, I'm sorry. I did a lot of design thinking to a company, and some of them, and most of them are not tech-based solution. And if you think design thinking is linear, no, it's not linear. Same as explained from our previous speaker. It's non-linear. Ibig sabihin, you can go back and then bumalik kayo ulit. Okay? Bumalik kayo ulit. Pwede. Hindi siya masama. Hindi siya parang, nasa second step ka na. Move forward na tayo. Hindi po. You can go back. If you don't feel that's right, you can go back from the step 1. So, what is design thinking? Design thinking, this is how designer thinks. Sino po ulit mga graphic designer dito? Have you experienced naggawa ka ng design, pinarevise ka ulit? Tapos hindi nagustuhan, pinarevise ka ulit? Pinarevise ko. Teka lang. Events na bukas, pinarevise pa din ang poster? Yes, that is design thinking. This is a never-ending revisions. Have you noticed that your smartphone and iOS is asking you for another version? Download it now, and they will give you another version. That is the revisions. Kaya sinabi ko kanina, this is a never-ending iteration. Kaya simulan mo na. Simulan mo na, di ba? Kung hindi, kailan ka pa magsisimula? Na pag-iwanan ka na ng other competition. Design thinking is a mindset where you put, this is a productivity tool, this is the art of problem solving and decision making. This is the best problem solving and decision making. And design thinking is a perspective where you put human in the center of every process. Pag nag-isip ka ng product, put human in it. Pag nag-isip ka ng font, think about human. Pag nag-isip ka ng UX and UI, put human in the center. Always, always human. Kasi pag pinilagay mo sarili mo, ang tawag sa'yo, self-centered. Tama, okay? But if you know or if you learn some other methodologies in the future, design thinking is like a glue to other methodologies. It complements to Lean Six Sigma, Kaizen, whatever process that you have, it complements. So this is the skills that you need to develop now, because we are in the future. We are in the fourth industrial revolution. So saan po natin magagamit ang design thinking? You can use this for startup, SMEs, product innovation, social innovation, visual communication, customer experience innovation, architects, interior design innovation, employee engineering, design thinking, lab business innovation, etc., etc. Almost everything you can apply design thinking. Hindi lang po sa technology na pinag-aaralan nyo. I have a book about this. Hindi ko lang siya matapos. I don't have time. Pero I will definitely connect with you guys once I finish with that book. And that's how that's how I set up my own business. Okay, this is not about my story, but I want to teach you the design thinking and how powerful design thinking is. So who are the companies using this? Google lang naman. IDEO, Nike, Apple, Coke, IBM, Lego, Baker McKinsey, GNE, Airbnb, Infosys, Virgin, etc., etc. So you can Google right now design-led companies, and these design-led companies are using innovation technology or innovation method, and one of them is design thinking methodology. Sa Philippines, I don't know. Because Filipinos are colonial mentality. Colonial mentality po tayo. Kapag hindi uso, kapag hindi ginamit ng majority, hindi natin gagamitin. That's why we need to be the first. That's why I'm happy, no? I've been keeping asking one of the students here. Sabi ko, is your design thinking is a major class? Yes, sir, major po. Sabi ko, wow, ang galing naman. Because you guys made the first step. And these struggles, this hiccup is part of the areas that you need to improve. Explain sa inyo later, no? Because all of us, we want to be successful. This is what we taught in school. Laging sinasabi, oh, ang dami mong mali, ang dami mong mali. So, ikaw, mafe-feel depressed ka. Grabe naman, mali ko. Pwede bang mistake lang? Pareho lang yun, di ba? so, objective kasi na tinuturo sa atin, even our parents, to be successful. Oh, mag-aral ka na maigi, ha? Kasi kung nag-aral ka maigi, makakahanap ka ng magandang trabaho. Okay, and then what? You're gonna be slave forever. Di ba? Corporate slave ka forever. You're gonna go into the rat race. And it's a never-ending story, di ba? Ang dami nangyayari. Majority of us wanted to be successful. But you know what? Failure is part of the equation. So don't be scared or don't be afraid na magkamali. Pag sinabi nila, eto ka, no? Hindi, batugan ka, lagi kang hindi gumigising ng maaga, ang papangit ang design mo, hindi ka nakikinig sa teacher, wala ka maintindihan, ganito, katuwing nanonood tayo ng movie, tanong, sabay naman tayo nanonood, di ba? Pag sinabihan ka ng ganun, it doesn't mean, no, that's your reality. It means those are the areas that you need to improve. I have more failure than success. Hindi po ako magiging creative director kung hindi po ako nilait-lait ng mga taong nakatrabaho ko since I was graphic artist all the way up to become a creative director. And you know what? I am thankful because every failure is part of the equation of the success. And this is what I believe. Fail fast so you can fix the problem fast. Yes. So pag sinabi nila sa ito, Cleo, okay, I'm gonna share to you one story. No? One story lang about what happened to me way back when I was in a corporate. Sinabihan ako ng boss ko, Cleo, 5 things, ha? 5 things. Ato, blah, 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 blah. Yung leadership mo, yung mga tao mo, hindi na creative, etc. Alam mo yun, yung feeling ko, nandoon ako sa table, closed door meeting yun na, closed door meeting. Doon ako sa side chair niya, and then nasa table yung boss ko, yung nagagalit siya. Imagine this like an anime, lumalabas yung pangil niya, yung sungay, buntot niya, tapos namumula siya. So ako nandiliit, ganun na nararamdaman ko. And then, Cleo? Oh, ma'am, thank you. What? For everything you told me. Thank you? Yes, ma'am, thank you. Because you're telling me the areas that I need to improve. Wow. Boom. Pang Miss Universe ang answer. Diba? Labas ako sa pinto with proud pa. Pero sa isip ko, naku, 5 points. Paano ko gagawin yan? So from there, I look at the 5 points and dinevelop ko siya in 1 month and then done. Wala na siyang masabi sa akin. So after I resigned, kinuha pa niya ako as a consultant sa Walter Mart department store. And sinabi ko, Ma'am, why did you get me as a consultant, brand consultants of this, one of the biggest retail company in the Philippines? Sabi niya, you know what? Because you look at the problem differently. That's what I like about you. Sabi ko, wow, thank you po. So I became a consultant for 3 months at the Walter Mart Retails. And the rest is history. Okay? So guys, this is what I want to tell you. Failure is always a fertilizer of success. So don't be scared to fail. In fact, you're a student right now. Your objective is to fail. Huwag naman intentional, no? Binagsak mo yung grades mo. Sabi kasi ni Coach Cleo, bagsak ko daw eh. Hindi, huwag intentional. That's a different story. Baka mamaya magalit yung professor niya sa akin. Coach Cleo, sabi mo kasi mag-fail sila, lahat sila fail. Ay, di good. Those are the areas that need to improve. Alin? Eh, nakikinig sila sa mali. No? So at any rate, you guys need to look at it this way. Okay? Pag sinabihan ko ni professor nyo, ganyan, because all your professors are working hard, no, for you guys to understand the subjects that they are trying to teach. So sometimes, no, you guys need to understand yung mga sinasabi nila sila. Hindi nila nilalait kayo at hindi nila kayo pinapahirapan. They want to bring out the best in you. That's what I believe because I'm a professor as well. Part-time nga lang. Okay? So look at this. So they haven't failed, but they found 10,000 solutions that don't work. Who says this? It's Thomas Edison. Imagine that. Probably 10,001. Doon niya lang naisip yung, tadan! See? So again, guys, you don't have to be afraid to fail. And now let's jump into the 5 phases of design thinking. This is the most interesting. So I've been observing the 2 speakers kanina. They were able to discuss the 5 phases of design thinking. And then now, let's go into some of that details, no, for you guys to really understand the 5 phases on how to use this para pagdating sa ideathon nyo, kick-ass kayong lahat. Alright? Ready? Okay. The first phase of design thinking is empathy. So everybody, please type empathy in the chat box, please. Empathy. Very good. Please type empathy in the chat box. Thank you. So empathy in Tagalog is malasakit. Okay? Dapat may malasakit ka sa ibang tao. Empathy is the cornerstone of design thinking because we put human in each processes. Again, we are so passionate with our product. We are so passionate with our service and hindi natin alam na we're not connecting to the customer. Wala naman may gusto niyan. Ba't mo pinipilit? Ikaw lang pala. So the way to do it, you have to understand the persona or the behavior of your client, of your customer. Okay? So, because this empathy, it starts with human, it's understanding the user, and it's all about them. It's not about you. It's not about the product. It's not because you graduated with the flying colors. It's not about you. The world, the people, the customer, they don't care about where you came from. What they care about is what will you offer to them. Anong maitutulong mo sa akin? That's what they care about. And then empathy has three types of empathy. Okay, I want to pinpoint or to discuss more on the empathy because this is the cornerstone of design thinking. Okay, so empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Parang ganito yan. Sir, ganyan po nararamdaman ko ngayon. Why? Because I have an empathy. I became a student once. Diba? I became a student once. That's why I have an empathy. So these are the types of empathy. First is feel. Okay? Ito yung emotional empathy. Literally feel others person's emotion, the somatic or physical connections. Ito yung, "Oh, grabe, ang bagsak ka. I feel you, besh. I feel you, besh. Grabe ka." Oo. Bakit? Bagsak din ako. Ganun siya, di ba? So that's empathy, no? Emotional empathy. And there's another type of empathy is think, no? Cognitive empathy. This is a capacity to understand others' perspective or mental state, or sometimes they call it perspective talking or theory of mind. Parang, bakit ko siya napilay? Grabe, I want to help the situation, no? I want to help, but my situation isn't the same. Okay? May empathy ka in your cognitive empathy. Okay? The next type of empathy is called think cognitive empathy. Okay? So, oh, sorry. This is action. Okay, correction. No, I'm just gonna. Okay, this is action. So, action empathy is you take actions from what you feel about this person. That's what you call action. Sorry for that. I'm just gonna correct this and gonna give you a real good copy for this one. So, as action empathy is something like, oh, nahihirapan ka. Pare, eto, alam ko nahihirapan ka. Oh, mangopya ka na lang. Alam ko naman talagang wala kang alam eh. Di ba? That's empathy, hindi siya sarcasm, no? But in your words, parang alam ko nararamdaman mo na wala siyang wala may tutulong ka sa kanya. So you take an action to help them. So that's what you call you and me and we, no? This is empathy. Okay? It's not about you, it's about them. So again, if you're going back to ideations, I want you guys to look at what's in it for them. So, alam ko may pinag-usapan na kayo mga products that you guys created, but you need to step back. What's in it for them? Ito ba ang produkto na makakasagot sa kahirapan nila? Is this the product that's gonna be the answer, the solution on what they are having now? Is this a product or service that you're going to put this person from point A to point B? It's all about them. It's not about you. Now, Sir Cleo, Sir Rock, is there a formula on how to understand them? I'm sorry, no. There is no secret sauce to do this. You have to listen, you have to immerse yourself, you have to observe or converse with them if you can. That is understanding the persona of your customer. And that is empathy. Next is define. Everybody, please type define in the chat box, please. Define. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna play, no? We're gonna play. After this, we're gonna play, okay? So in define, this is the ability to look for the gaps. Okay, ability to look for the gaps. Don't worry, I will help you to understand this. By the way, host, are you still there? Can you hear me? Do you have
Yes, we hear you. We I think we lost access to the visuals.
Okay, yun nga
The
eh. That's why,
presentation.
that's why I'm asking again, no? I stop sharing ko. And how about the audio? If I share this, is the audio gonna play automatically?
We could try.
Sige. I'm gonna play a video. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so step back lang for a little bit. Define, okay? So does everybody type define in the chat box? Great, thank you. Okay, so define is ability to look for the gaps. By the way, since I don't have a monitor here, host, if you could help me, just speak up and let me know if you can still see if my slides are moving or not. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, awesome. So let's play. Everybody's ready? Can you please type yes in the chat box, or if you are ready to play, say yes. Yes. Woohoo! Let's play. Masyado kayong seryoso eh. Maglaro muna tayo. Okay, so let us play. Awesome. Okay, in this video, I know you're multitasking right now, but I want you to have your full attention here because this video is called awareness test. It's not gonna last long, okay? Ano lang to, mga less than a minute, right? So this in the video starts now. Okay, so can you please type in the chat box how many does the team in white made? No, made yung passes nila. Okay, yung assist. How many? Please type in the chat box. There you go. I want to see all the answers. Please try to remember, ha. Hindi ko yan makikita. Mapa-flood na tayo eh. Okay, please type in. Okay, iba-iba yung answer. Okay, let's see if your answer is correct. 13. Here's the catch. Did you see the moonwalking bear? Okay, can you please type here if you see the moonwalking bear in the chat box? I see the moonwalking bear. Walking bear. If you don't see the moonwalking bear, please type it here in the chat box, please. Whether you see or not, type it in the chat box. This is perfect definition of define. It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. Parang, oh, may project ako, okay, gawin mo na kaagad. But we don't understand what we're trying to sell. We don't understand kung ano ba talaga ang kailangan ng tao. Product is not just invented because you like it. Product and service or the company was created because of purpose. Purpose. What is your company's purpose? Yun po siya. And then how can you find it? This one, using design thinking. Okay? Wait lang nga. I-stop sharing ko lang. I'm curious kung nakita nyo ang what is moonwalking bear. No, ang daming hindi nakakita ng moonwalking bear. Okay? See, majority kasi po, no, ng mga hindi nakakita is actually, haven't seen the moonwalking bear. It's actually it's normal. It's normal. Madami po din nakakita. All right. So, host, can you still see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, perfect. Okay. So again, in the phase 2, define is what is your message. You have to identify.
Oh wait, hold on. It's black. I'm just seeing a black screen.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and share it again. I appreciate that. That is design thinking. Thank you so much. All right. So what is your message? Can you see it clearly now?
There we go. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So again, to identify, clearly understand, define, we're gonna play again. Okay? We're gonna play. Everybody please type yes in the chat box. If you're ready, say yes in the chat box. Okay. So yung iba nagtatanong ano po yung moonwalking bear. Walang tutulog-tulog sa pansitan. Okay? I cannot replay this. All right. So here we go. We're gonna play now. Our next game, I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna show up a logos of the companies and then please tell me what are they selling. Okay? What are they selling? I'm gonna help you understand the moonwalking bear in these companies. Ready? In 3, 2, 1, go. Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific. What are they selling? Type in the chat box, please. In 3, 2, 1. Next, Grab and Uber. What are they selling? Type in the chat box, please. In 3, 2, 1. Let's try to remember your answer, ha? Mapa-flood tayo niyan. And then also, LBC and Ninja Van. What are they selling? In 3, 2, 1. Next, YouTube and Netflix. What are they trying to sell? In 3, 2, 1. Type in sa chat box. And then GCash and PayMaya. What are they selling? In 3, 2, 1. Okay, type in the chat box. And the answer, okay, that's stop. Stop na. Let's now figure out the answer. Again, we're gonna look for the moonwalking bear. So Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific have the same airplane, guys. Pareho lang aeroplano nila. They have same Boeing models. They have the same business. So what makes them different from each other? What makes them different from each other is the experience, relationships, and comfort. Just like McDo and Jollibee. Hello, punta ka sa McDo, may lahat ng ino-offer nila, may offer sila. Lahat ng milk tea, may ino-offer sila. So what makes them different, no, from other services or product? This is it. This is the moonwalking bear. So Grab and Uber, they have the same business model. Experience, convenience, and solution. How about LBC and Ninja? Experience, convenience, and solution. YouTube and Netflix. Comfort, experience, and entertainment. How about GCash? Solutions, experience, and convenience. How about this one? So these could be the product you're creating right now, or you will be creating in the future. It could be an experience, emotion, function, story, relationship, comfort, convenience, hope, solution, fitness, health, love, or entertainment. These are the moonwalking bear that you need to understand when you develop your product or services. I hope this could help into your ideathon, which is the third part of design thinking. Everybody, to please type ideate in the chat box, please. Ideate. Thank you for your cooperation. Ideation is coming up with a lot of solutions. Again, no, one of our speaker mentioned about Crazy Eight. Well, I call it Ocho Loco. So creating idea in just 8 minutes. So in ideation, the rule here is to defer judgment. Walang barilan ng idea, okay? Walang basagan ng trip, kumbaga. So defer judgment of others. Don't hold back on your ideas. Nothing is too crazy. Impractical is good. Throw your ideas rapidly. So in here, you have to figure out what will you offer. Ano ba ang maibibigay mo sa kanila? Okay, let's step back. The first three phases of design thinking. What's in it for them? Empathy. What's your message? Define. What will you offer? This is ideate. So these are the three things that you need to understand to make your product more human-centered. Am I making sense? Okay, let's now go to the fourth step of design thinking, prototype. Everybody, please type prototype in the chat box, please. Prototype. Amazing. Thank you so much. Prototype is creating an intangible ideas or making ideas tangible, provides reference points. These are communication tools. Doesn't have to be perfect. So gawin nyo na, no? Gawin nyo na. Why? Because ideas are good. Execution is the king. Always remember that. Parang crush mo lang yan. Ang ganda, ang pogi. Pero kung nilapitan mo, hindi alam design thinking. Diba? Ganun lang siya. Ang pogi, ang ganda, ang gwapo, ang sexy. Tinanong mo, 6 times 6, 66. Patay na this, no? Alam na this. So, prototype, no? Ideas are good, but execution is the king. And then, the last step of design thinking is test. Everybody, to please type test in the chat box, please. Test. Awesome. Thank you so much for your participation. Again, testing is taking your prototypes out in the field, try them, break them, learn from them, and try again. Okay? So, ganito ang idea, no? Nag-isip kayo, identify the problem, and then you find the moonwalking bear that define, and then nag-create na kayo ng produkto, nagawa na kayo ng prototype, and test nyo muna sa public. Wag nyo po munang itetest sa public. Wag nyo munang ibebenta pala. Okay? Wag nyo munang ibenta. Gawin nyo muna, and pasubok nyo muna in your circle of friends. Pag pinasubok nyo siya, ibalik nyo siya. Okay, sabi nila ang pangit daw ng font, ang pangit to, hindi nila maintindihan, ganyan-ganyan. So doon nyo ma-encounter all of these problems in testing part, and then go back to the drawing board, and then empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Empathy, define, prototype, and test. So in the practice, 3 times before they release it to the public. 3 times. Okay? 3 iterations yan. 1, 2, 3. In practice, in practice. Pero kasi school, baka wala na kayong time, no? Kahit isa lang, tuloy-tuloy na yan. Pero in practice, we do that 3 times, user testing, and then pag okay na, launch to the public, pero it doesn't end there. That is just a beginning. Eto na yun, kaya pansinin nyo, no? iOS and Google Play, meron silang review. Are you guys participating doon yung review? Anong ayaw mo? Ang dami nagmumura about ang galit nila. Pero you know what? Those are all valuables. Kasi from there, nakakapag-create sila ng panibagong version of their technology. So paganda yung technology nila. Huwag kang kabahan sa mga complaints na nare-receive mo. Huwag kang kabahan sa mga complaints na makukuha mo from your product. Kabahan ka kapag walang sinabi na masama about your product. Because that's the end of your business. Am I making sense? Can you please type yes here in the chat box, please, if I'm making sense? Thank you so much. All right. So again, design thinking is a goal-oriented. We begin in end in mind. So before you start your ideathon, isipin nyo kaagad, what is our goal, guys? What's our goal? Isipin nyo kaagad yung goal nyo. Okay? Look at the big picture. Ano ba ang gusto nyong mangyari? Because if you don't understand what you're gonna happen, what you want to do, or what you want to achieve, saan kayo pupunta? Parang buhay lang yan. If you don't know what is your future, and if you don't visualize your future, you're gonna end up living day by day. Blind. Hindi mo alam kung saan ka. Oy, nag-apply sila doon sa call center. Sige, apply din ako. Oy, nag-apply sila, web designer. Doon din ako. Oy, nag-asawa na siya. Asawa na rin ako. Diba? Parang, hey, wake up. You need to figure out your future. Same din sa app. Ano bang tinatanong ng app? If you're using Grab or Angkas, where are you going? Ganun din po, you have to ask yourself, your team in Ideathon, saan ba ito pupunta? And even ask yourself, what is your future destination? Okay? So guys, this is the design thinking 101. Creativity and innovation is the competitive edge in the future. You have to future proof yourself. Future proof yourself. Because the future is now. If you don't innovate, you will die. Wow, sorry, hindi man lang ER. Ganun din yun, ilang minutes patay ka na din, di ba? So, innovate or die. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cleo. I'm a design thinking expert. I'm a certified Google Design Sprint Master. I'm a visual communication expert, brand communication expert, growth hack marketing expert, certified production innovation customer experience, creative director, and entrepreneur. You can follow me at the Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Racleo and Racleo311 for Instagram. And then I'm an Anvil Awardee 2018 and 2019, top 100 Filipinos to follow at LinkedIn by giving inspirations at 2020, last year 2020. And last year as well, I was awarded top Filipinos to follow on LinkedIn by giving career advice. And then last year, in God's grace, I was awarded as a top trainer and facilitator for creative innovations in the Philippines. So thank you so much for being a good addition to my 1 million mission to train 1 million people to be creative, innovative by using design thinking principles by the year 2030. So when you type a hashtag 1M-1 by 2030, thank you so much. So again, I took up my design thinking at National University of Singapore, my Google Design Spirit and Asia Smart, and I'm one of the advocate of design thinking here in the Philippines. So I became a mentor of Startup Weekends by Google, and naging mentor din ako, coach sa Final Pitch Season 3. Yung minentoran ko, natalo. Just kidding. Nanalo po sila. Ito po, FH Mom. Try to look at FH Mom. They're the biggest mommies organizations in the Philippines. And natulungan ko po sila by using design thinking. And I facilitated workshop of design thinking imagine, pandemic, ha? I rose my dumaas yung workshops ko in-house and publics, and then as strategic planning, innovations, and keynote speaking. This is keynote speaking, okay? So that's why you guys are good addition. Ito lang, give you an idea. Isa lang po akong hamak na graphic artist na naging creative director, and now I'm helping companies to strategically innovate their business. I didn't imagine this. That's why God is my designer. And then I already spoke with a prestigious school in the Philippines, and FEU, tamang-tama, wala pa kayo sa mga logos dito, so lalagay ko kayo dito. So 4,080 people na na-train ko in the individuals, and these are the companies that I work with and universities. I already talked na po sa Dubai, USA, and Indonesia. And then yung malalaking logo, malalaking magbayad yan, yung maliliit magbayad. And then baka yung FEU baka maliit pa dyan. Okay. Yung wala pa dyan. Wala pang bayad. Okay. Ganyan lang po. Ganyan lang yung process ko. Okay. So this is what I do. This is my company. I speak, I facilitate, and I train all about design thinking. So I have visual communications masterclass, brand communications, entrepreneurs. And if you want to facilitate design thinking, if you want to understand it, I teach that as well. All of those are all with design thinking methodology. And this is my company, Growth Hack Playground. So we do all e-marketing needs, social media, sales funnel, chatbot, for e-commerce, personal and branding, real estate. All of them, okay, with human-centered design. All of them. Okay, so I'm gonna open now the floor for Q&A. But before that, last thing I promised, do you want a presentation copy? And presentation copy na lang kasi may a certificate actually. Do you like to have a copy? Can you please type yes in the chat box, please? Thank you so much. Bibigyan ko kayo ng copy, but I believe in fee. Okay, hindi po bayad, fee. Fair exchange of energy. Okay, so please subscribe in my YouTube channel. I'm gonna type it here in my chat box, or I'll give it na lang doon sa organizer. And give me an endorsement sa LinkedIn ko or sa Facebook page. Once I saw in any one of that, I will give you the copy of the entire presentations. Okay, so again, thank you so much for being a good addition to my 1 million mission. And also, please help me to train 1 million people to be creative and innovative by using design thinking principles by the year 2030. And now we're done. Thank you so much, guys. Congratulations. I like the GIF of Aaron. This is nice, Aaron. That's
Mr.
rock.
Cleo, thank you so much for that fun and engaging presentation. Now
You're
we are
most
going
welcome.
to have a short Q&A session with Mr. Cleo. So if you have questions that you want to ask our guest speaker, just send your message in the chat box so we can assist you.
All right. Any questions, clarifications, any violent reactions from you guys? I'll be gladly to accept it. Okay, wala pa nagtatanong no so far. This is surprising. Okay, yun na, pumapasok na. Okay, any tips? Ako na ba magbabasa host o ikaw? Sorry.
Um, I could read it for you, sir. So,
Okay, sige. Mhm.
Mrs. Resty Aldana asked, any tips on how to find that running man bear?
Okay, in fact, you cannot find the running man bear because it's moonwalking bear. Okay, magkaiba po yan. Okay, Rusty, this is an interesting question. In fact, to figure out the moonwalking bear is you need to immerse yourself. You need to understand the pain points. Okay, so if this is the fastest way to practice design thinking, tanangin mo kaagad, no, yung customer nyo. What is your pain points ba? Okay, ano bang problema nyo? Ikaw, you just collect all these people that surrounds you and then ask for their pain points, and then from there you can figure out na kung anong product that you could create. Basta understanding the pain points is the first, that's the moonwalking there. Ano ba yan? Okay, so once you created the product, what are you trying to sell there? What are you trying to sell? Is it the product? No, it's the solution. Okay, sell the solution. You are not selling the product. You are trying to solve their problem. That is the moon walking bear. Pag nagugutom ka, anong solusyon? Kumain, di ba? Okay. So what's your craving? Ang sabi ni Jollibee, langhap sarap. Di ba? So why paano? Amoy pa lang busog ka na. Okay. That's what they're selling. That's what Jollibee is selling. In fact, what Jollibee is selling is the langhap sarap, number 1, Filipino. And then second is the service. Sila nagpaumpisa ng pagpasok pa lang sa loob. Hello, ma'am, sir. Mag-isa ka lang. Tinawag kang ma'am, sir. Alam na this, no? Wow, alam nyo kaagad gender ko. Ma'am, sir kaagad. Parang nagulat ka pa, no? So, parang sa SM, no? Pagpapasok ka sa SM, happy to serve. That's what makes the company different from other companies. It's the experience. Kaya nga sabi ng previous speaker natin, di ba, the UX and UI. UX, experience, no? UI is the interface, the experience of what makes everything different. That's the moonwalking bear. I hope I was able to satisfy you there, Mr. Rusty Aldana. Okay, Gabriel, my IG, just Cleo 311. Rock Cleo 311.
Okay, we have someone asking, Kessler. He asks, sir, not a question, but what are your thoughts on creative block?
Okay, thank you for that question. In fact, ang dami nagtatanong sa akin nito. I can share that to you. Before ko i-answer yan, may message lang si Gab Thomas de Los Santos. Ang basa ko, sir, ang pogi nyo. Yung pala, sir, ano po IG nyo? Sorry naman, no? Medyo may edad lang. Buti lang binasa ko ulit IG. Okay. So question, what are your thoughts on the creative block? In fact, creative block kasi, no, this is a conditional. Hanapin mo kung saan ka productive. I'm a creative director, I'm a graphic artist myself. This is based on experience, ha? This is based on experience. Hanapin mo kung saan ka productive. Umaga, tanghali, gabi. Kung wala doon, may problema tayo. Okay? Tigil na natin usapan na to. Pero hanapin mo. Seriously, hanapin mo. Saan ka productive? Umaga, tanghali, gabi. Or madaming tao, or walang tao. Ako, In my experience, I'm productive if there's no people around me. Kaya productive ako sa umaga at productive ako sa hapon, which is paalis na yung mga tao. But now I'm working alone, mas productive ako most of the time because in my studio, konti lang kami na sa office. I enclose myself and I work there. So I already figure out on how to take me out from this the creative block. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you have to unplug. Okay, unplug mo yung sarili mo. Get yourself away from the computers, from your cell phones. Mag-swimming ka, mag-bike ka, do some sports. Try to stay away from technology and mag-unplug ka. Okay, that's number two. Number three is try to do some stuff that's non-creative related. Okay? Hindi naman yung matulog naman, hindi naman yun. Non-creative, wag na yung matulog. Non-creative related, so magtanim ka, mga ganun. Maglaba ka, madami kang labahan. Do something else, no? Do something else non-creative. And then try mo, pagkabalik mo, bang, lalabas yung creativity mo. And then lastly, okay, guys, this is for everybody's information. I'm a highly spiritual, mukha lang akong addict. Okay? So my last tip is number 4, be prayerful. Pray for creativity. It works. I'm telling you, it works. It works. So I hope I was able to satisfy you there for a creative block, and I was able to inspire other students here as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cleo. There's another question from Adrian Garcia. He asked, would you say that it has gotten harder to find solutions to people's problems in a world where countless others are trying to do the same thing?
Okay, so would you say that it has gotten harder to find solutions to people's problem? You know what? It's about perspective, Adrian. It's actually an interesting question. No? It's about perspective. Ako kasi, I don't run out of solutions. Okay? That's one thing that you need to develop. Don't run out of solutions. Problem kasi hindi din nawawala. Okay? Hindi rin siya nawawala. So, dapat mas madami kang solutions na may isip and mas, because the problem is keep us on recurring. Okay? I'm gonna give you some background why our problem is keep on recurring. It's gonna be something like spiritual, ha? So, disclaimer lang. So, ganito yan. God is giving us challenges. If God gave you some challenge and you didn't overcome that to become your strength, ibibigay niya ulit sa iyo yan. He will give that to you. Why? Because He wants you to master it. You might run out of solutions, maybe because you are self-centered. But if you care for others, no? You are a learner. Kapag learner ka, you will not run out of ideas. Learner means you ask for advice from the experts. At pag nanghingi ka ng advice, hindi ka nagagalit. Okay? Kasi life is a lifelong learning. Ang buhay po natin. So, problem and solution, it's like night and day. Hindi natin mape-prevent ang problem at dapat meron tayong solution. It always go together. Problem and solution. Now, to make your life easier pa, design thinking is the art of problem solving and decision making. So now, understanding design thinking, hindi ka nakakabahan magkaroon ng problema. In fact, every time na may problem ka, mag-i-smile ka na lang. Why? Because this is the area that you need to improve. Yun po yun. I hope I was able to satisfy you there, Adrian. If not, please message me. Yeah, let's talk. I can elaborate that to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Another question from Angelica Ontuka. She asked, how do we make sure we aren't consumed with failure when we don't see how it should be fueling us?
Okay, this is actually intriguing questions, no? Actually, Angelica, no, we are living in a world na think positive, you attract positive, you think positive, etc., etc. But you know what? I'm living in my life, I'm living of fear and failures. All of this are all behind me. Takot po ako. Okay, sabi nga nila, negative thinker ka ba? No. I'm an optimistic. But pag hindi ko ginawa ito, I will fail. So fail yourself forward, my dear Angelica. Fail yourself forward. not backwards. Kasi pag nag-fail ka, you will fall into this trap. This is what people want to see to you. You fail. Okay? So you will not consumed by failures. It's your mindset that tells you that you are a negative thinker. Imagine this, guys. This is what I do to my coaching. 80% of people, 80% of negativity, hindi po galing sa people surrounds us. 80% of negativity came from you. Ang number one na nega sa buhay mo ay ikaw. Hindi po yung kaibigan mo. Mukha lang siyang nega, no? Nega. Pero hindi talaga siya nega. Feeling mo lang nega siya. Ikaw po, ikaw ang nag-iisip. So, you are not consumed. Again, change your mindset. This consumed, no? If this failure helps you to move forward, I think this is what I call fail fast so you can you can fix your problem fast. I hope I was able to satisfy you there, Angelica. And again, if you want more clarification, please message me. I will be glad to help to understand it.
Thank you again, everyone. That ends the Q&A portion. I apologize for the lack of time for our speaker to answer the rest of the pending questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Rock Cleo. Honestly, I was quite surprised initially on how condensed the growth of technology is and how things just get obsolete at this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Technology is progressing faster. A lot of things are improving and also becoming more digitalized and accessible.
Which is why we really need to make sure we apply creativity to have a good chance for a better future. We need to stop the stigma about creatives.
That's right. Creativity is important as other aspects. Thinking of creative ways to solve a problem helps you look at problems and situations from a fresh perspective.
Yeah, but our product should always meet our users' needs no matter what. I feel like that's the common theme in all of the talks today. Empathy is really core, right, Lulwa?
Agreed. Really, at the end of the day, it's the people who are the center of design thinking.
Yeah, I think another good takeaway is that failure is part of the equation.
Yes, we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, we started from the bottom, now we're here, di ba nga? Even if we fail, failure is a fertilizer, as Mr. Cleo mentioned. It's just so powerful. And another thing is having purpose, which is very important.
Definitely. It's what makes doing something meaningful. It motivates us to do better and figure out our weaknesses, which improves us overall.
Again, that's empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Okay, let's move on to the next part because we're running out of time.
All right. So let's move on to the awarding of certificate of our appreciation for his time and his valuable contribution. This certificate of recognition is awarded to Mr. Rock Cleo for sharing their knowledge in Design the New Normal, held by FEU Alabang and FEU Institute of Technology. Signed by the organizing committee head, Mr. Charles Kyle Reyes, the design thinking course advisor, Mr. Jorge Alcalde, and the academic head of College of Computer Science, Mr. Jefferson Bombasi.
Again, Mr. Rock Cleo, thank you so much on behalf of everyone here today. Thank you for taking the time to impart your wisdom on innovation and creativity in design thinking. The knowledge we've gained today is really something we can all put into practice in our lives. So thank you again, Mr. Rock Cleo. Okay, wow. So today was a blast, right?
I agree. There's just so much fun. There's just so much to learn from our guest speakers.
Yeah, way too much. And so, Lulwa, what was something that really hit you today?
It would probably be the value of doing right as a designer and how empathy is the core. How you should create and push for designs that is intuitive and inclusive for everyone.
Okay, that was a good one. Okay, so I believe we've reached the end of day 1. Is there anything else we should add?
Yes, before we end day 1 of this event, day 2 would be a design thinking ideathon wherein a team of 6 members would pitch their best idea through a PowerPoint presentation design map that would explain how they came up with it. As this is a design thinking ideathon, the criteria for judging is based on the application of the design thinking process, which will be discussed beforehand by the guest speakers.
Reservations of categories for the event will be open after this. And remember, once a category is full, it will be posted immediately on the Facebook page. So be sure to like and follow the Design the New Normal Facebook page displayed on the screen.
Lastly, a QR code is on the screen right now. We ask only the participants to please accomplish this as proof of your attendance, as failure to accomplish this would mean no certification.
Yes. So, I believe that's a wrap for today.
Yes, I'm sure everyone had fun and learned a lot from our guest speakers.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you all for being here today. The continuation of this event will be on Friday, March 12, 8 a.m. for the Ideathon. We hope you all enjoy the program. Again, this is your Masters of Ceremonies, Tim Gingona.
And Lula Nervio signing off. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you all for attending this webinar. Hope to see you all on day 2. Goodbye.